My name is Kai Sato, and until the age of 19, my greatest athletic achievement was surviving the deep end of a public pool while wearing goggles that leaked like they were legally required to betray me. I was not a swimmer. I was not even a guy who looked good near water. I had the body of someone who had once considered buying a pull-up bar, then used the money on fried chicken. That changed on a Monday morning when I woke up with one sentence floating in my head. My maximum swimming speed has permanently increased by 1 mile per hour. I thought it was a weird dream notification. You know how dreams sometimes act like video games for no reason? I once dreamed my grandma had a stamina bar, so I ignored it. Then I went to my college pool because my roommate June had stolen my laundry detergent and told me I could have it back if I beat him in 1 lap. June was on the swim club. I was on the club of people who bought sports drinks because the bottles looked cool. He dove in like a dolphin. I jumped in like a refrigerator being thrown off a bridge. And somehow, I won. Not by a lot. Just enough for June to surface, stare at me, and ask when I learned freestyle. I told him I had not learned freestyle. I was basically slapping the water and hoping it feared me. We raced again. I won again. Then I raced the fastest guy in the club. I barely beat him. That was when I started paying attention. The next morning, I woke up with the exact same feeling. No floating screen. No angel. No wizard. Just an instinct so clear it might as well have been tattooed inside my skull. 1 more mile per hour. I went back to the pool. This time, I was faster. Not more skilled. Faster. That difference mattered. My arms were still ugly. My breathing rhythm was still trash. My kick looked like I was being attacked by invisible bees. But whenever I tried to move as fast as possible, the water simply gave up and let me through. On Wednesday, I gained another mile per hour. On Thursday, another. By Friday, the lifeguard stopped checking the pool and started checking me. He actually blew his whistle while I was swimming and shouted that running was not allowed. I was in the water. That is how stupid the situation had become. June started timing me. At first he thought the stopwatch was broken. Then he borrowed another stopwatch. Then he used his phone. And then he made another swimmer film me from the side. I kept getting faster every day. And the weirdest part was that I did not feel stronger anywhere else. On land, I was still me. I could still get winded climbing 4 flights of stairs if I had eaten too much ramen. But in water, my body had some hidden permission slip from physics. By day 9, June had stopped laughing. He stood at the edge of the pool holding 3 stopwatches like a desperate casino manager and said I had just covered 50 meters at a speed that should have required years of elite training. I asked if that meant I should buy better goggles. He said it meant I should stop wearing goggles from a supermarket toy aisle. So I bought expensive racing goggles. They lasted 11 seconds. I hit my top speed. The water pressure peeled them off my face, and they shot backward hard enough to smack June in the forehead. He looked at me with a red mark between his eyes and said, very calmly, that my face had just weaponized eyewear. That was the first time I realized this power did not come with equipment upgrades. By day 12, my swim cap ripped. By day 13, the drawstring on my trunks failed during a flip turn. That incident taught me 2 things. First, compression racing suits are worth the money. Second, no human being should discover they are magically fast while simultaneously trying not to flash an entire college swim team. I touched the wall, turned around, and realized half the pool had seen enough of Kai Sato to qualify for an unwanted documentary. I wanted to drown from embarrassment, but unfortunately I had become too good at swimming. I started training at night, not because I was humble, because I had learned the hard way that speed plus loose clothing equals public indecency with hydrodynamics. A week later, June entered me into a local swim meet without asking. I tried to refuse. He told me first prize was $500. I asked what time registration started. The meet was at a community aquatic center where every serious swimmer arrived with matching tracksuits, expensive bags, protein bars, and the facial expression of people who had never skipped leg day. I arrived carrying a convenience store breakfast sandwich and a towel with cartoon sharks on it. Everyone ignored me until the first race. Then the starter beeped. I launched forward. The water exploded behind me. I touched the opposite wall so early that for a full second I thought I had committed a false start and been disqualified. Then I looked back and saw the rest of the swimmers still moving toward me. I had beaten the pool record. The official stared at the timing board. June stared at the timing board. The crowd stared at the timing board. I stared at my breakfast sandwich. For some reason, that felt like the safest thing in the building. They reran the timing system. They checked the sensors. They inspected my lane like I had installed a secret underwater conveyor belt. One coach actually asked if I was wearing fins. I lifted both feet out of the water. He looked disappointed, like he had really wanted to catch me smuggling dolphin technology between my toes. I won the final by even more. By Monday, clips of me were everywhere. My favorite title was Unknown College Guy Swims Like Rentists Do. My second favorite was Human Torpedo Destroys Local Dads. My least favorite was a slow-motion edit of my terrible stroke set to romantic piano music. I watched it once and immediately understood why ancient warriors chose honorable death. The attention brought coaches, then reporters, then brand offers, then men in suits who kept saying phrases like performance pathway and elite development environment. I smiled, nodded, and understood absolutely nothing. The only offer I accepted came from a sportswear company that promised to make me custom swim gear strong enough not to detonate off my body. That seemed useful. The next 30 days got ridiculous. Every morning I gained 1 mile per hour. No exceptions. If I was sick, I gained it. If I slept badly, I gained it. If I spent the whole day sitting on the couch eating spicy chips, I still gained it. My maximum speed was becoming less like fitness and more like a subscription service I could not cancel. The professional swimmers I raced were monsters of technique. Their starts were cleaner. Their turns were sharper. Their bodies looked designed by engineers. And I kept beating them because my top speed was now deeply disrespectful. People started asking for my training routine. I made the mistake of joking that I drank chocolate milk and listened to aggressive anime openings. 3 weeks later, a sports nutrition shop was selling something called the Kai Method Chocolate Recovery Stack. I had nothing to do with it. The label used a picture of a guy who looked vaguely Asian and extremely constipated. Jun bought 2 tubs. He said he wanted to see if copyright theft improved his butterfly stroke. My first national-level race turned into a media circus. I was nervous for maybe 10 seconds. Then I got in the pool. The moment the race began, nerves stopped mattering. I accelerated so hard that my first stroke slapped a wave into the next lane. By the halfway point, I was ahead. By the final turn, I was embarrassingly ahead. By the finish, the other swimmers might as well have been reading menus. The crowd went silent before it went insane. That was the pattern from then on. First disbelief, then noise, then someone checking the equipment. My time was so absurd the officials delayed the result for 43 minutes. One of them asked me if I had consumed any banned substances. I told him I had eaten a gas station hot dog 2 nights earlier, and if that counted as a performance enhancer, then humanity had much bigger problems. I passed every drug test. I passed every medical exam. Doctors scanned me, measured me, poked me, put wires on me, and eventually reached the scientific conclusion of... One researcher asked if he could study my muscle fibers. I asked if that involved cutting me. He said only a tiny biopsy. I told him to biopsy his own ass. June laughed so hard he fell off a chair. That joke became a meme. The researcher did not find it as funny. Another month passed. By then, swimming pools had become too small. That sounds arrogant, but it was literally a safety problem. At maximum speed, I could reach the end so quickly that turning became more dangerous than swimming. I had to slow down before each wall or risk introducing my skull to reinforced concrete. I tried using an Olympic-length pool with padded barriers. I destroyed one pad. Then I tried a giant training basin used for marine testing. That worked for 3 days. On the 4th, I reached a speed where the wake coming off my body splashed over the side and soaked an engineer holding a tablet. He looked down at his dead screen and called me a water-based workplace hazard. I apologized. He said the apology would mean more if I stopped grinning. I could not. I was having too much fun. There was something impossible about going that fast under my own power. At low speed, water felt heavy. At high speed, it changed. It became a roaring tunnel pressing against every inch of me. My ears thundered. Bubbles streamed around my arms. My body skimmed forward like the ocean had turned into a road only I could see. Then came the race that changed everything. A harbor tourism company invited me to race one of their sightseeing boats. It was obviously a publicity stunt. The boat was not particularly fast. It carried tourists, sold canned drinks, and had a captain named Morris who looked like he had personally argued with every seagull in the city. The planned course was 2 miles along the coast. Captain Morris looked at me before the start and said he would try not to splash me too badly. I told him I would try not to embarrass his boat. He laughed. I laughed. June filmed the whole thing. At the horn, the boat surged forward. I dove in. For the first few seconds it led. Then I reached maximum speed. I passed the stern. I passed the middle deck. I passed the bow. I looked sideways while swimming and saw 30 tourists with their phones out. One kid dropped an ice cream cone. Captain Morris stopped laughing. I finished the course 28 seconds ahead. When the boat finally arrived, Morris stepped onto the dock, pointed at me, and said I was no longer welcome to use the phrase fair race in his presence. The clip got 40 million views, and that was when a very bad idea entered my life. If I could beat one boat, people wanted to know what happened against a faster boat. A speedboat company called, then a yacht owner, and a ferry operator. Then, somehow, a man named Darren messaged me and claimed to own a military surplus patrol craft. I asked why. He replied, "Long story. I decided that was the most trustworthy answer I was going to get, so I raced the patrol craft. That was the day swimming stopped being a sport and became a genre of public stupidity. Darren's patrol craft looked less like a boat and more like something a villain would use to chase smugglers through a tropical island montage. It was long, gray, loud, and covered in antennas that made me suspicious of how legal his definition of military surplus actually was. Darren himself wore mirrored sunglasses even though the sky was cloudy. He shook my hand and told me the craft could push past 50 miles per hour in good conditions. At that point, my daily increase had been running long enough that I could barely reach that speed if I truly maxed out. Barely. Which meant this was the first boat race where I might actually lose. Naturally, the internet treated it like the final battle for control of the ocean. The harbor was packed. People rented balconies. Restaurants sold Kai burgers and patrol fries. Someone showed up wearing a homemade cape with my face on it. The face had been printed too large, so my nose covered most of his back. June took one look and told me I finally had the merch line I deserved. I told him if he ever wore one, I would personally tow him to another country. The race course was 10 miles, long enough that endurance mattered. That part worried everyone except me. Nobody understood that my ability did not only let me touch a higher speed. When I swam under that maximum, my body somehow handled it. I still got tired eventually, but the strange power seemed to scale my aquatic endurance along with the speed, as if reality knew that giving me 60-mile-per-hour swimming and then making me pass out after 30 seconds would be bad game design. The horn sounded. Darren's boat launched first. Twin engines screamed. The stern dug into the water. For several seconds I was swallowing bubbles and staring at gray metal pulling away from me. Then I found clean water and accelerated. 30 miles per hour. 40. 45. The surface changed beneath me. Each arm entry felt like punching into a moving wall. Spray burst around my head. My legs stopped feeling like legs and started feeling like a propeller assembled by a lunatic. I reached 50. The patrol craft was still ahead. 51. I gained. 52. The distance shrank. Darren looked back from the cockpit. Even through mirrored sunglasses, I could see the exact moment he realized a shirtless college student was crawling up behind a military boat, using nothing but spite and shoulders. I pulled alongside. He pushed harder. The engine note climbed. I pushed harder too. For nearly a mile we stayed side by side, his boat hammering over the chop, me slicing beside it. The crowd followed us through live streams from drones and chase boats. One drone got too close to my wake and vanished into the water like it had been swatted by God. June's voice came over my waterproof earpiece. He said the drone company wanted to know if I was willing to pay for it. I told him to send them a picture of my empty wallet. Then I got an idea. The patrol craft was faster in a straight line, but the course had marker buoys. Darren had to swing wide around them because boats have turning circles. I did not. At the first buoy, I cut so tight my shoulder practically brushed it. Darren had to carve a wide arc. I gained 30 yards. At the next turn, I did it again. By the 6th mile, I was ahead. Darren tried to make it back on the straight. He almost did, but every turn punished him. I crossed the finish line 12 seconds ahead. When I climbed onto the dock, my custom suit was intact, my arms felt like microwave noodles, and I had the grin of a man who had just defeated several tons of diesel using cardio. Darren arrived and killed the engines. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he took off his sunglasses. His eyes were watery from wind. He said he had spent $60,000 restoring that boat. I said it looked great. He said that was not the point. I said I knew, but I was trying to keep things positive. A reporter asked him how he felt. Darren looked into the camera and said, "Like Poseidon just teabagged my bank account." That sentence traveled around the world before I got home. By the next morning, my inbox had become unusable. Luxury yacht companies wanted races. Jet ski brands wanted sponsorships. A billionaire wanted me to race his helicopter across a lake, which June had to explain would no longer count as swimming versus boats. A submarine tourism company asked if I could swim underwater long enough to race them. A water park offered me $20,000 to go down their fastest slide backward. I rejected that one immediately. Even I had standards. My power worked while I was actively swimming. It did not make gravity respect me, and I was not interested in being remembered as the world's fastest aquatic dumbass who died because a water slide turned his spine into modern art. For another 2 weeks, I chose races carefully. I beat a jet ski over 5 miles because the rider had to refuel after aggressively showing off before the race. I beat a fishing boat because the captain accidentally caught one of the course buoys with a line and dragged it 80 feet before realizing. I lost to a high-performance racing boat by almost 4 minutes, which was weirdly exciting because losing had become rare. The internet celebrated like the boat had defended human dignity. The next morning, I gained another mile per hour, and suddenly the loss did not feel permanent. That was the thing nobody could compete with. I did not need a better engine. I did not need new parts. I did not need steroids, propellers, experimental fuel, or a motivational coach screaming about discipline. I needed Tuesday. Every sunrise was an upgrade. A month after the racing boat loss, I challenged it again. Same boat. Same driver. Same course. This time, I won. Not because I had trained harder. Not because I learned some secret technique. I had simply existed for 30 more mornings. The boat had received maintenance. I had received a calendar. It was terrifying enough that the sports media stopped treating me like an athlete and started treating me like a developing weather system. Scientists wanted measurements. Engineers wanted measurements. Navies from several countries definitely wanted measurements, although their emails used softer words like consultation. One government office invited me to a secure research facility. I politely declined because I had seen enough movies to know that secure research facility is how you end up waking up bald in a glass tube. Instead, I agreed to work with an independent ocean engineering institute whose director, Dr. Mei Tanaka, had one condition: no racing near normal people until she understood what my wake was doing. I asked how bad it was. She showed me a video. At my new maximum speed, I passed a floating sensor buoy from 50 feet away. The buoy jerked sideways so hard it nearly flipped. Then she showed me another video where I accelerated near a dock and sent a wave over the edge. A man eating noodles got soaked. He kept holding the bowl for 3 full seconds, staring at it with the expression of someone whose soul had temporarily left the server. I felt terrible. May paused the footage on his face. She said, "This man is the reason we need safety rules." I said that was cruel. She said it was memorable. She was right. The institute gave me a testing zone far from the harbor. They tracked my speed with radar, sonar, drones, and enough sensors to make me feel like a suspicious missile. They also designed a new suit. It had reinforced seams, low-drag panels, a thin neck guard, ear protection, and special goggles held in place with a strap that looked capable of restraining a bear. The first time I put it on, June said I looked like a superhero whose power was preventing chafing. I told him superheroes had killed people for less. At 90 miles per hour, things changed again. Normal swimming strokes became inefficient. Every time my hand entered the water, the impact hammered up my arm. Every breath risked filling my mouth with a pressure washer. So May's team helped me redesign the way I moved. I started spending more time just below the surface. My arms stayed closer to my body. My kick became tighter and faster. Instead of trying to move water like a traditional swimmer, I learned to let my strange ability produce forward force while I minimized everything fighting it. I looked less like an Olympic athlete and more like a torpedo that had been raised by humans. That was when we discovered my second ridiculous advantage. I could tow things. It happened by accident. A sensor sled broke loose during a test, and I swam over to grab it before it drifted away. It weighed almost 400 pounds and was designed to be pulled by a boat. I expected to struggle. Instead, once I started swimming, it moved. Slowly, but smoothly. My power seemed to care about my own maximum speed, but if I accepted a lower speed, I could drag huge loads behind me. May's eyes lit up. June's eyes lit up for a much worse reason. He said, "Do you realize what this means?" I thought he was going to say rescue operations. He said, "Human banana boat." 24 hours later, I was towing June and 3 engineers on an inflatable banana. This was not an approved experiment. May found out because someone live-streamed it. I had never seen a woman walk down a pier with that much murder in her posture. She confiscated the banana. June tried to argue that we had collected valuable towing data. May asked where the data was. June held up his phone and showed her a video of himself screaming while the banana bounced over my wake. She stared at him. Then she stared at me. Then she said the two of us shared one brain cell, and it was currently drowning. She still kept the video. The towing discovery gave me a new kind of fame. I started doing demonstrations for rescue crews. I could pull emergency flotation equipment faster than many small boats. I could reach a stranded kayaker in minutes. I could carry waterproof medical packs strapped to my back. The rescue people took it seriously. I tried to, but the internet did not. The moment somebody posted a photo of me towing a rescue raft, people edited everything behind me. A school bus, a castle, the moon. One edit showed me towing an entire continent while June sat on top drinking juice. I sent it to him. He made it his profile picture. At 100 miles per hour, I stopped racing ordinary boats. It was too easy. At 110, I raced a racing catamaran in strong wind and beat it. At 120, I raced a prototype hydrofoil boat and lost by 3 seconds. That loss bothered me all night, not because I hated losing, because I knew exactly what would happen. 3 days later, I asked for a rematch. The engineers laughed. The driver did not. He already knew. I beat them by 14 seconds. Afterward, one of their mechanics kicked a tire on the trailer even though the boat did not have tires while racing. He just needed something nearby to blame. My favorite part came when a journalist asked if the boat team planned upgrades. Their lead engineer said, "Yes, we're currently developing a way to stop mornings." That became another meme. By then, I had a manager. I never wanted a manager. Her name was Lila Moretti, and she entered my life by walking into the institute conference room, dropping a 3-inch stack of printed contracts onto the table, and telling me I was 6 bad signatures away from accidentally selling permanent naming rights to my left leg. I asked if that was really in one of the contracts. She opened to page 87. It was. A beverage company wanted my left calf referred to as the splash fuel power limb during all official appearances. I felt something inside me die. Leela became my manager that afternoon. She canceled half my sponsorship talks, renegotiated the other half, and banned June from answering business emails. This was necessary because June had responded to a luxury watch company with, "Kai cannot tell time because he experiences speed differently." I did not experience speed differently. I was just bad at being punctual. Leela also introduced rules. No unplanned racing. No towing people for jokes. No accepting food from strangers at events. No agreeing to challenges that contain the words flaming, shark-infested, or probably safe. I asked why shark-infested had to be written down. She slid a printed email across the table. Someone had offered $200,000 for me to race through a shark aquarium wearing a tuna necklace. I stared at it. Then I looked at June. He said the money was pretty good. Leela told him he was banned from the meeting. The biggest problem was that my speed kept increasing whether we found good uses for it or not. Every day, another mile per hour. Every week, 7. Every month, around 30. At first that had felt slow. Then it felt inevitable. The boats around me were reaching their limits. I was not. One afternoon, May put a chart on the screen. It showed my measured maximum speed over time as a straight line climbing upward. Then it showed the top speeds of different kinds of vessels. Fishing boats, ferries, Speedboats, racing craft, experimental hydrofoils. The chart looked like I was climbing a staircase made of other people's engineering budgets. May pointed to a future date. She said if nothing changed, I would reach 200 miles per hour in less than 3 months. June whistled. Leela did not. She asked the obvious question. What happens to water at 200 miles per hour when a human body moves through it? May said, "We're going to find out." I did not love the way she said that. The first test above 150 miles per hour was terrifying. We moved 40 miles offshore, so I would have open water. A support ship stayed far behind. Drones watched from above. I floated alone in the ocean, staring at a horizon with nothing on it. Then May counted down through my earpiece. I started swimming. 20, 50, 80. The water began screaming around me. 100. My wake stretched behind me like a white scar. 120. My body lifted closer to the surface. 140. Every tiny wave became a bump I felt through my shoulders and spine. 150. For a few seconds, fear told me to stop. Then something else happened. I found a position where the water beneath me became almost smooth. My chest skimmed. My legs kicked in a blur. The noise turned into one continuous roar. I accelerated harder. 155. 160. The support team started shouting numbers. I could barely hear them. Then a flying fish launched out of the water in front of me. It struck my shoulder at 160 miles per hour. I will never forget that moment. Not because it hurt badly. My body was somehow protected enough to survive it. I remember it because the fish exploded into scales, slime, and pure disrespect across the front of my suit. I came to a stop, floated there in stunned silence, and realized I had just been drive-by slapped by seafood. June's voice came through the earpiece. He asked if the fish was okay. I looked at the glittering biological confetti around me. I said, "Brother, that fish is now a rumor." Even May laughed. The video was never released publicly. Leela said it was too graphic. June said it was art. I said I never wanted sushi again. For almost 6 hours. After that, the team added a thin, transparent face shield to my suit. It made me look even more like a human missile. We also began mapping safe ocean corridors where I could test without crossing shipping routes. That turned out to be more complicated than expected, because ships are everywhere. Cargo ships, tankers, fishing fleets, cruise ships, private yachts, research vessels, and people who apparently wake up, buy a sailboat, and immediately forget international navigation rules. May gave me a compact GPS unit integrated into my wrist display. Leela made me take an actual maritime safety course. June took the course too and failed the first test because he answered a question about right-of-way with, "Whoever has the bigger boat?" The instructor stared at him for a full 10 seconds. June asked if there was partial credit for practical realism. There was not. I passed. Barely. Then came my first truly long-distance challenge. A shipping company had a small cargo vessel making a 90-mile coastal run between 2 ports. They were willing to let me race it as long as I stayed well outside their safety zone and followed a separate marked route. The vessel could maintain around 20 knots. At my speed, I should destroy it. But this was not about speed. It was about distance. I had never swum 90 miles continuously. Even with my strange endurance, that sounded insane. So naturally, I agreed. Leela asked why every sentence beginning with "I have never" seemed to make me more interested. I said maybe I had a growth mindset. She said maybe I had brain damage. The race started before sunrise. The cargo ship departed from the harbor channel. I started from a buoy several miles away. My route was longer to keep us separated, but I was much faster. At first, it felt easy. I held myself below maximum speed to conserve energy. The ocean was dark blue and cold. The sky brightened behind me. My support boat followed from a safe distance carrying May, June, Lila, food, emergency gear, and enough cameras to document my suffering in high definition. Every 30 minutes I slowed enough to grab a drink pouch from a drone. This was May's solution to feeding me without bringing the boat close. The drone hovered above the surface and lowered a sealed pouch on a cord. The first one worked perfectly. The second one slapped me in the face. The third one dropped the pouch into the water. June had labeled it breakfast sauce. It was actually banana puree mixed with electrolytes. I sucked it down while floating and immediately understood that athletic nutrition was invented by people who hated joy. It tasted like someone had whispered the concept of banana into wet drywall. Still, I kept moving. 20 miles. 30. 40. The cargo ship was far behind. My body hurt, but it held together. At 50 miles, I saw a pod of dolphins. For a few minutes, they swam near me. That was the coolest thing that had ever happened in my life. Then I increased speed. They fell behind. I slowed down because beating dolphins felt morally wrong. Jun called me sentimental. I told him dolphins had better public relations than he did. At 65 miles, a storm cell appeared ahead. Not a huge storm. Just rough weather, heavy rain, ugly chop. The support team wanted me to divert. I could have, but I realized something. The cargo ship had to follow its planned coastal approach. I had more freedom. If I angled farther offshore, I could skirt the worst part of the weather and still reach the destination first. So I changed course. That was the first time my races started feeling less like pure speed contests and more like strategy. I was not just a fast swimmer anymore. I was becoming my own vessel. A weird, mostly naked vessel fueled by sports gel and bad decisions. I passed around the rain cell, then accelerated. The final 20 miles blurred together. My shoulders burned. My legs felt numb. Salt crusted around the edge of my goggles. But I kept moving. When the destination harbor appeared in the distance, my support boat radioed that the cargo ship was still more than 40 miles away. I reached the finish buoy first. Then I climbed onto a floating platform, sat down, and immediately ate 4 sandwiches. A reporter on the dock asked what I had learned from the challenge. I said that 90 miles of seawater can turn a man's inner thighs into 2 angry pieces of sandpaper. Leela covered her face. June nearly fell into the harbor laughing. The quote became the headline. Of course it did. But beneath the jokes, everyone understood what had happened. For the first time, I had traveled between cities by swimming faster than a commercial vessel could make the trip. The idea spread instantly. Could I deliver packages? Could I carry medicine to islands? Could I cross channels? Could I beat ferries on their own routes? Could I swim between countries? That last question sat in my head longer than the others, because the number said yes, not someday. Soon. The first international crossing was supposed to be simple. That sentence should have warned me. Nothing in my life was simple anymore if it involved salt water, cameras, and June having access to a group chat. The route was a narrow sea channel between 2 neighboring countries. The exact distance depended on the course, but our planned path was a little over 30 miles. Ferries crossed it every day. Cargo traffic used nearby lanes. Thousands of people traveled across by boat without thinking twice. I was going to do it with my arms. The legal paperwork took longer than the swim. That was the first surprise. Apparently, immigration officers do not enjoy hearing, "I will be entering your country from the ocean at approximately 170 miles per hour. One official asked what vessel I would be arriving on. I said, "Me." He asked for the vessel registration. I said, "My birth certificate?" He did not laugh. Leela took over before I accidentally caused a diplomatic incident through paperwork incompetence. We eventually arranged an official start and finish zone with customs processing on both sides. I even had a waterproof pouch containing my passport. June wanted me to hold it in my mouth for the entire crossing like a golden retriever carrying important mail. I told him if he mentioned that idea again, I would list him as cargo. The morning of the crossing was cold and windy. A ferry was scheduled to leave around the same time, which created the obvious comparison. The ferry company insisted it was not a race. Their social media account posted a picture of the ship with the caption, "Some of us have seats." I respected that. And then June posted a photo of me standing on the dock with the caption, "Some of us don't need parking." Lila made him delete it. It had already been screenshotted 12,000 times. I entered the water. The horn sounded. And for the next few minutes, I experienced one of the strangest moments of my life. The ferry moved off in the distance, large and white, carrying hundreds of passengers. I started swimming on my assigned route. From shore, both of us looked small. Then I accelerated. The coast behind me shrank. The ferry was still climbing to cruising speed when I was already cutting across open water. At 100 miles per hour, the air above the surface felt sharp against my face shield. At 150, the sea became a streaking texture beneath me. I held below maximum because the channel was busy and May wanted control more than speed. Even so, the ferry never had a chance. Halfway across, I received a message through my earpiece. The ferry captain had radioed our support crew. He wanted to know if I would slow down near the ship so passengers could see me. I asked if that was safe. May said yes, if I approached from the approved side and stayed well clear. So I did something absolutely unnecessary. I looped around. I swam back toward the ferry. Then I cruised beside it at matching speed. Hundreds of people lined the rails. They waved. I waved back. A guy on the upper deck held up a handwritten sign saying, "Bro skipped the ticket." I nearly inhaled seawater laughing. Then a woman next to him held up another sign. It said, "My husband says he can beat you." Beside her stood a deeply embarrassed middle-aged man shaking his head. I pointed at him and gave a thumbs up. The crowd went insane. Then I accelerated away. The ferry disappeared behind me. I reached the other country less than 15 minutes later. Technically, the actual swimming time was absurdly short. The customs process afterward took almost an hour. I stood wrapped in a towel while an officer inspected my passport and asked how I had arrived. I pointed at the ocean. He looked at the ocean, and he looked back at me. The face he made was the bureaucratic equivalent of his brain blue screening. That crossing led to a strange new career opportunity. A medical logistics company asked if I could test emergency delivery between islands. Not every island had an airstrip. Boats could be slow. Helicopters were expensive. I was, apparently, a guy with legs. The idea was simple. Put a waterproof canister on my back, give me coordinates, and let me swim. Leela liked it because it was useful. May liked it because it gave us controlled endurance data. I liked it because I got paid more than I had ever been paid to carry a backpack. June liked it because he designed a fake courier logo that showed me swimming with a pizza box. Our first trial was 38 miles to a small island clinic. The package contained temperature-controlled medical supplies. I treated that mission more seriously than any race. No showboating. No close passes. No unnecessary maximum speed burst. I left the support vessel, locked onto the island coordinates, and maintained a stable pace. The trip took less time than a normal helicopter preparation cycle. I arrived, handed the canister to the clinic staff, signed a delivery form, and realized something hilarious. There was a blank for vehicle number. I wrote, Kai. The nurse processing the form stared at it. Then she laughed and stamped the page. By evening, the company had turned that delivery form into a framed poster for their office. The tests continued. I carried replacement machine parts to a research island. I carried blood samples back to a mainland lab. I carried an expensive camera lens to a film crew after their supply boat got delayed. That last delivery was stupid because the lens was worth more than everything I owned combined. I spent the whole swim imagining dropping it into a trench and having to explain to an insurance company that their $80,000 glass tube was now being used by an octopus. Nothing happened. I delivered it safely. The director tipped me $500. June asked if I wanted to split it because he had provided emotional support remotely. I told him to emotionally support himself into getting a job. Then the island courier idea became a trend. Companies started pitching cargo harnesses. One startup wanted to create a streamlined pod I could tow behind me. Another wanted to put advertising panels on my wake somehow. A third asked if they could attach a tiny turbine to me to harvest energy while I swam. May read that proposal twice, then whispered, "These bastards want to turn you into a human phone charger." She rejected it before I could ask how many phones. The towing pod was more interesting. It looked like a long white capsule with small fins and a flexible tow line. It could hold emergency supplies, tools, or several hundred pounds of cargo. We tested it in open water. At 50 miles per hour, it behaved perfectly. At 80, it bounced slightly. At 100, it started dancing behind me like a shopping cart with one bad wheel. At 110, it launched out of the water. The pod flew 6 feet into the air, landed sideways, and dragged me backward by the harness. I skipped across the ocean's surface 3 times before releasing the line. June's drone caught everything. When I climbed onto the support ship, he replayed the footage in slow motion. My body slapped the water so violently that I looked like a tortilla being thrown onto a kitchen counter by an angry chef. He laughed until he had tears coming out of his eyes. I told him to stop. He replayed it. I told him I hoped every USB cable he ever owned only worked at one specific angle. He stopped laughing. Some curses are too serious. May redesigned the pod with hydrofoils and active stabilization. The second version worked. That allowed me to carry nearly half a ton at moderate speed. Now the shipping industry started watching more closely. Nobody thought I was replacing cargo ships. I could not carry thousands of containers, and I was still one human being who occasionally forgot sunscreen. But for urgent small loads, I was absurd. A boat might take 6 hours. I could take 30 minutes. A helicopter might be faster in some cases, but I could leave from places without runways, fuel infrastructure, or much preparation. The media started calling me the water courier. I hated it. It sounded like I delivered enchanted scrolls to mermaids. June loved it. He had business cards printed. On the back they said, "Same-day delivery unless sharks are being weird." Lila confiscated those too. My speed crossed 200 miles per hour on a Thursday. We knew the date was coming. May had spent weeks preparing. At that speed, even a tiny floating object could become dangerous. So our testing zone had to be cleared by boat and drone first. The weather needed to be calm. My suit needed upgraded impact protection without adding too much drag. We also added a mouthpiece connected to a tiny compressed air system. Not scuba gear. Just enough air to let me stay submerged for short, high-speed runs without trying to breathe at the surface. The first time I used it, I hated it. The mouthpiece made me feel like I was biting a dishwasher hose. But the advantage was huge. A few feet underwater, I was protected from surface chop. The world became dark blue and smooth. When I accelerated, bubbles streamed from my body and collapsed behind me. At 200 miles per hour, the pressure around my suit was incredible. I did not understand why my bones were not turning into soup. May did not understand either. My ability protected me somehow. That was the only explanation. It was as if the same force that granted speed also granted exactly enough durability to use it. Not on land, only while swimming. We proved that accidentally when I stubbed my toe on a lab stool afterward and screamed loud enough to scare a technician in the next room. June stared at me. He said, "You can swim through water at 200 miles per hour, but IKEA furniture still solos you." I told him the stool had attacked without warning. At 210, I raced a powerboat built specifically for speed. This one was different. It belonged to a private racing team led by a man named Victor Hale. Victor was rich, competitive, handsome in the irritating way that suggested he had never taken a bad passport photo, and obsessed with proving machines could still beat me. I liked him immediately because he was honest about it. He did not pretend the race was for science. He did not say it was about innovation. He said he wanted to beat me because watching boats lose to a man in goggles was making his industry look ridiculous. Fair enough. His boat was called Glass Viper. It was a carbon fiber monster with twin turbine engines and a cockpit that looked stolen from a fighter jet. Victor had spent months modifying it. The first time I saw it, I whistled. He smiled and asked if I was worried. I said yes. He looked surprised. Then I added, "I'm worried you spent all this money just to lose to my thighs." June made a choking noise behind me. Victor's smile disappeared. Lila turned around and walked away before cameras could catch her reaction. The race became the biggest event I had done. 20 miles of open water. Straight line. No tactical turning advantage for me. No excuses for Victor. Glass Viper had been clocked above 220 miles per hour in testing. My current maximum was 214. For once, the boat had me on raw speed. But speed was not the only variable. Victor's boat consumed fuel at an absurd rate when pushed hard. Its turbines also needed ideal water conditions. I did not need fuel. And rough water bothered me less because I could dive slightly below the surface. The forecast showed moderate chop. Victor still accepted. The start was insane. His turbines screamed so loudly I felt the sound in my chest. He launched forward in a wall of spray. I dove and accelerated underwater. For the first 3 miles, he gained. I could see his shadow above and ahead whenever I rose near the surface. My support team called out the gap. 200 yards. 300. 400. Victor was winning. Then the water got rougher. Glass Viper began hitting waves. At his speed, each one forced him to adjust. He could not run flat out without risking the boat becoming an airplane with terrible landing gear. I dropped 10 feet below the surface. The chop disappeared. I kept my speed. The gap stopped growing. Then it shrank. At mile 10, I was less than 200 yards back. At mile 12, 100. At mile 14, I saw the wake of Glass Viper above me. I stayed deeper to avoid it and pushed harder. Victor still had higher top speed, but he could not use all of it. I could use almost all of mine. I passed beneath into the side of him. For one glorious second, I looked up through the blue water and saw the shape of his expensive boat racing above while I moved ahead below like some unpaid aquatic demon. I surfaced 50 yards in front. Victor saw me. He accelerated. The final miles became chaos. His boat flew over the chop. I skimmed and dove. Our support aircraft tracked both lines. The finish marker approached. Victor closed the gap. I could hear his turbines again. I hit maximum speed, 214 miles per hour. The finish line was a virtual GPS gate between two distant marker craft. I crossed it less than 1 second before Glass Viper. Less than 1 second after 20 miles. I slowed gradually, turned around, and watched Victor circle back. He killed the turbines and climbed out of the cockpit. For a moment, he just stood on the deck. Then he laughed. Not angry laughter. Real laughter. He yelled that he wanted another race in 1 month. I yelled back that in 1 month I would be 30 miles per hour faster. He said he knew. That was why he only needed 3 weeks. I respected that level of delusion. Victor became my recurring rival. Every few weeks he appeared with a faster machine. A new hull. A new engine setup. A hydrofoil system. An experimental rocket-assisted launch that May described as engineering after 3 energy drinks and a divorce. He kept finding ways to stay near me, for a while. But the problem never changed. He had to build improvements. I had to wake up. At 250 miles per hour, Glass Viper 2 lost by 9 seconds. At 280, Glass Viper 3 overheated halfway through, and Victor finished the race while yelling at an engine warning light. At 300, he unveiled something called Sea Wraith. Sea Wraith barely looked like a boat. It was a narrow hydrofoil craft with enclosed turbines and control surfaces that lifted most of the hull above the water. It had active stabilization, computer-controlled trim, and enough telemetry to send 3 engineering departments into emotional crisis. Victor claimed it could exceed 310 miles per hour in ideal conditions. I was at 304. He had me again. Barely. The internet went feral. People chose sides. Team Kai. Team Victor. Someone sold shirts that said, meat versus machine. Lila hated the word meat. Jun bought 6. The rematch took place on a 50-mile straight course. This time, calm water favored Victor. When Sea Wraith lifted onto its foils, it moved like nothing I had raced before. Smooth. Fast. Almost silent compared with Glass Viper. It pulled away. For the first time in months, I could not catch the boat through tactics. No rough water. No turns. No fuel problem over 50 miles. Victor had designed the perfect race for his machine, so I did something he did not expect. I stopped swimming at maximum speed. I slowed down. June screamed over the radio asking what I was doing. I ignored him. I watched Sea Wraith's wake. The hydrofoil left a narrow, disturbed path behind it. I had spent months learning how boats affected the water. Most wakes were bad for me, but at extreme speed, Sea Wraith created a long channel of moving water. I moved into the outer edge of that flow. Not directly behind it. That would have been unstable and dangerous. Beside it, the water there was already moving forward. My relative drag dropped. I accelerated. The effect was small. But at 300 miles per hour, small mattered. I stayed in the sweet spot like a cyclist drafting a truck made of $10 million in ego. Victor looked back through the camera system and saw me gaining. He moved sideways. I moved too. He moved again. I followed. We spent 3 miles playing the world's fastest game of get this freak out of my wake. Then Victor made a mistake. He swerved too aggressively. Sea Wraith's control system corrected automatically, forcing him to reduce speed for several seconds. I shot past. Victor recovered and chased. He was still technically faster, but now he was behind my wake. And my wake was not friendly. At 300 miles per hour, the water behind me looked like it had been placed in a blender by Satan. Victor had to shift course. That cost him the race. I won by 4 seconds. When we met afterward, he accused me of weaponizing turbulence. I said he had brought a computer-controlled hydrofoil worth more than a hotel. He said that was different. I asked how. He thought about it. Then he said, "Mine has cup holders." I could not argue with that. The rivalry made both of us famous in a new way. Victor became the face of machine speed. I became the face of whatever the hell I was. We did interviews together. We appeared in commercials. We once filmed an advertisement for waterproof headphones where the director asked us to look intensely at each other from opposite sides of a dock. Victor nailed it immediately. I started laughing because a pelican landed behind him. The director reset. We tried again. The pelican walked closer. I laughed harder. Victor kept a straight face for almost 20 seconds before the pelican bit the heel of his shoe. He screamed. The company used that take as a blooper. It got more views than the actual commercial. By then, my daily ability had been active for almost a year. I was approaching a maximum swimming speed that sounded fake even to me. 350 miles per hour, then 360, and 370. Crossing seas became casual. I could leave one coast in the morning, have lunch in another country, and be home before dinner if the distance was right. I still used normal transportation on land because my power was useless there. This created absurd situations. I once swam 200 miles in 40 minutes, then spent an hour waiting for a taxi. Another time, I reached an island faster than the production crew filming me. So I sat on the beach alone for 90 minutes eating crackers while they traveled by helicopter. Being the fastest thing in the water did not make airports less annoying either. Security still made me take off my shoes. At one airport, an agent recognized me and asked why I was flying instead of swimming. I pointed at the fact that our destination was inland. He nodded like I had revealed ancient wisdom. I was starting to understand my power's greatest weakness: continents. Water made me a monster. Land made me some guy looking for public transportation. The land problem inspired Jun's worst idea yet. He called it Amphibious Kai. He presented it in May's lab using a slideshow he had made at 3 in the morning. Slide 1 showed a photo of me swimming. Slide 2 showed roller skates. Slide 3 showed a poorly edited image of me wearing roller skates on my hands and feet. Jun explained that I could swim towards shore at high speed, jump out, land on wheels, and continue rolling across land using my momentum. Nobody spoke. He clicked to slide 4. It said, "Potentially revolutionary." Lila closed the laptop. May told him that if he ever tried to test the concept without supervision, she would personally revolutionize his health insurance premiums. I pretended not to be interested. I was extremely interested. 2 days later, under very supervised conditions, we tried a safe version, not roller skates, a wheeled sled. The idea was to see whether I could approach a specially designed beach ramp at low speed, transfer onto the sled, and coast forward using momentum. It worked. Technically, I swam toward the ramp at 30 miles per hour, slid onto the padded sled, and rolled almost 400 feet along a closed track. Jun acted like we had invented teleportation. May called it a complicated way to become luggage. Leela asked whether any part of it helped my actual career. Jun said not yet. She banned slide presentations. My next official event was much less stupid. Or at least it looked less stupid on paper. A famous cruise line challenged me to race one of its largest ships from one island port to another, roughly 600 miles away. The cruise ship was enormous. It carried thousands of passengers, restaurants, pools, theaters, shops, and probably at least one buffet large enough to have its own weather system. It would take more than a day to reach the destination. At my current speed, I could theoretically cover the distance in under 2 hours if I maintained a high pace. That made the race completely unfair, which was exactly why people wanted to watch. The cruise line leaned into the joke. They offered passengers a special Race the Human package. There were observation decks, live tracking screens, themed drinks, and a poolside event where people could attempt to swim against a current machine set to 1% of my speed. 1%. Several people still got launched backward. I boarded the ship before departure for the opening ceremony. That was a mistake. I had not considered how weird it would be to walk through a cruise ship full of people who had specifically bought tickets to watch me humiliate their transportation. Everywhere I went, someone wanted a picture. A group of grandmothers asked me to sign their matching swim caps. A teenager handed me a rubber duck and said it was my official navigator. A man at the buffet challenged me to an eating contest. I asked why. He said, "You can't beat the ship at everything." I respected his courage, but declined because I had seen what he was doing to a plate of shrimp, and I wanted no part of that biological war crime. The start took place just outside the harbor. I jumped from a support platform while the cruise ship slowly cleared the channel. The race rules gave the ship a 30-minute head start. That was mostly for dramatic effect. By the time I started, it was a tiny shape on the horizon. June asked if I was worried. I said the only thing I was worried about was the cruise ship reaching the destination before I found somewhere to pee. He reminded me I was surrounded by ocean. I said, "There are thousands of people watching the live stream." He went quiet. Then he said, "Fair." I accelerated. The first 100 miles went by so quickly that my brain struggled to process the distance. An ordinary person could drive for hours and still be within the same region. I was crossing chunks of ocean before the support aircraft could reposition comfortably. The tracking map showed my dot closing on the ship like a horror movie. Passengers gathered at the stern. When I came within 10 miles, the ship broadcast my position over the public address system. By the time I reached 1 mile, thousands of people were outside. I slowed dramatically. Then I approached from behind. The cruise ship was moving around 22 knots. At that speed, matching it felt like barely trying. I came alongside the lower decks and waved. The crowd erupted. The rubber duck kid somehow appeared at a railing and held up another duck. I reached into the small pouch on my suit, pulled out the duck he had given me, and held it above my head. That caused a level of cheering normally reserved for championship goals and public executions of printer error messages. Then the ship's captain came over a speaker and challenged me to race to the next navigational marker. The distance was 5 miles. I looked toward the bridge. I could not see him clearly, but I raised one thumb. The horn sounded. The ship accelerated as much as a floating city could accelerate. I disappeared. 5 miles later, I was already floating beside the marker, eating an energy gel when the cruise ship arrived. The captain radioed. "That was unnecessary." I said, "You started it." Passengers loved it. The clip became promotional material for the cruise line. They somehow turned losing to me into an advertisement about enjoying the journey. Marketing people are terrifying. I continued to the destination. I arrived hours before the cruise ship. Instead of waiting at the official finish platform, I made another questionable decision. I checked into the hotel next to the port, showered, changed clothes, ate lunch, took a nap, and then returned to the dock. When the cruise ship finally entered the harbor, I was standing there holding a cardboard sign that said, "What took you so long?" Leela had not approved the sign. June had made it. The cruise passengers went insane. But the captain later told me he had considered turning around out of spite. The cruise race changed the public perception again. Before, people had understood that I was faster than boats. Now they understood the scale. Ships did not merely lose in a sprint. They lost at transportation. I could leave after them and arrive before them. I could sleep longer, depart later, and still win. That led to one of my most humiliating sponsorship campaigns. A mattress company hired me for an advertisement. The concept was simple. A cargo ship leaves at sunrise. I remain asleep in bed. Several hours later, I wake up, eat breakfast, swim to the destination, and arrive first. The slogan was about how great sleep gives you an advantage. The filming went fine until the director decided my fake wake-up scene was not believable. He kept asking me to look sleepier. I told him I had been awake since 4 in the morning for a stupid commercial. He said that was perfect and asked me to use the real exhaustion. Something inside me snapped. In the next take, I opened my eyes, stared directly into camera, and muttered, "Who the hell schedules a mattress shoot before sunrise? This is sleep propaganda with ass-backward management." The entire crew went silent, and the director whispered, "That's actually pretty funny." They released it as an online version. It got 20 million views. My manager looked 10 years older. My bank account looked healthier. I decided artistic integrity was complicated. Around this time, an international open water swimming organization asked to classify my records separately. I agreed immediately. There was no point pretending I belonged in normal competition anymore. My ability was supernatural. Everyone knew it. Testing me against ordinary athletes had become like entering a motorcycle in a 100-meter dash and then acting shocked when people complained. so I stopped official swimming races against humans. Instead, I became my own category. Exhibition swims, vehicle challenges, long-distance records, experimental transport, and increasingly strange requests. I raced a hovercraft. I raced an amphibious plane while it taxied on water. I raced a group of 20 speedboats at once, not because it was meaningful, but because a television network had a large budget and no adult supervision. I raced a remote-controlled prototype boat operated by an artificial intelligence system. The AI calculated an optimal route. I still won. Jun stood beside the engineering team afterward and told their computer to hold that aquatic L. One engineer asked what that meant. Jun explained it. The engineer looked offended on behalf of the software. Then I raced a water-skimming ground effect craft. That one was terrifying. It technically flew several feet above the surface once it reached speed, which started an argument over whether it counted as a boat. Victor said it did not. June said anything that could accidentally hit a fish was spiritually a boat. May refused to participate in the discussion. I lost that race. The craft reached nearly 400 miles per hour. I was still below that. For the first time in a while, the internet had a new machine to celebrate. The headlines declared that technology had reclaimed the ocean. I congratulated the pilot. Then I looked at the calendar. 28 days. That was all I needed. The rematch happened a month later. The pilot knew exactly what was coming. He improved the craft too, but only slightly. I had gained 30 miles per hour by existing. This time, I stayed close for the first half of the course. Then I passed him. The sight was surreal. He was gliding above the water on a cushion of air. I was underneath him, physically swimming. At one point, he looked down through the side window. I looked up. We made eye contact. I waved. He gave me the finger. I laughed so hard I lost 3 miles per hour. I still won. Victor called me afterward. He said the Machine vs. Kai arms race was becoming economically irresponsible. I asked if he was quitting. He said absolutely not. He had simply accepted that bankruptcy might be part of the journey. Then he sent me a concept sketch. It showed a sleek, needle-shaped craft labeled Sea Wraith 4. I stared at it. Then I noticed the estimated top speed, 450 miles per hour. I called him immediately. He answered with, "You worried?" I said, "I'm mostly worried your financial advisor is being held hostage." He hung up. The biggest shift happened when I crossed 400 miles per hour. May stopped calling my equipment a swimsuit. It became a water speed system. That sounded dramatic, but the gear had changed so much that she had a point. The outer layer was reinforced against impact. The face shield wrapped around my eyes and nose. A compact breathing unit let me remain submerged during acceleration. My wrist display showed course, speed, depth, and warning zones. Small stabilizing fins were built into my forearms and lower legs. They did not propel me. My ability still did that. They simply helped me control direction at speeds where moving one hand carelessly could send me carving sideways like a thrown spoon. We also tested an emergency drag system. If I needed to slow down quickly, panels on my suit could deploy to increase resistance. The first version worked too well. I triggered it at 100 miles per hour. The panels opened. My body decelerated so violently that my own legs swung forward and I basically folded in half underwater. When I surfaced, June asked if I was okay. I told him yes. Then I added, "But my testicles just tried to overtake my face." May dropped her clipboard. June collapsed against the railing. Leela was not even present, yet somehow I felt her disappointment from another city. We reduced the drag setting. The second version was safer. At 420 miles per hour, I attempted the longest single swim of my life so far. 1,000 miles. Not across an entire ocean yet. A carefully planned route through open water between remote support zones. The objective was endurance, navigation, feeding, and equipment durability. At high speed, I could cover the distance in a few hours. That still sounded insane. Before my ability, a 1,000-mile journey was something I associated with airplanes and road trips. Now May said the number during a briefing and everyone acted like I was going jogging. We launched before dawn. I carried no cargo except emergency supplies. Multiple support aircraft and ships were positioned along the route, far enough away not to interfere. I started conservatively at 250 miles per hour. That sentence alone would have made old me choke on his drink. The sea stretched forever. No coast, no buildings, no spectators. Just sky and water. For the first hour, I loved it. Then boredom became the enemy. At hundreds of miles per hour, the ocean still looked like the ocean. Blue ahead, blue below. More blue, occasional cloud. I started talking to June over the radio just to stay mentally active. He gave me trivia questions. I got most wrong. He asked what year a famous ship sank. I said I was currently in the ocean and did not want sinking trivia. He switched to food questions. That made me hungry. May took over and gave me course updates. Much better. At 300 miles, we performed an in-motion feed. A fast drone released a sealed nutrition capsule ahead of me on a tiny flotation strip. I slowed to 30 miles per hour, grabbed it, consumed the gel, dropped the empty into a recovery pouch, and accelerated again. The whole process took less than a minute. I hated the gel. The flavor was called Tropical Burst. It tasted like a pineapple had died angry and been reincarnated as toothpaste. I complained. May said calories did not care about my feelings. At 500 miles into the route, weather data showed a strong current ahead moving across my path. Normally, a current of a few miles per hour would mean almost nothing at my speed. But the current boundary created rough, chaotic surface conditions. So I went deeper. 30 feet. Then 40. The world became quiet. Sunlight dimmed above me. My navigation system guided the course. I accelerated underwater. That was when I saw something enormous below. A whale. Not close enough to be dangerous, but close enough that I instantly slowed. The animal moved through the water with a calmness that made my speed feel silly. For several seconds, I forgot about records. I just watched. Then the whale turned slightly. Its eyes seemed to face me. I had no idea what it thought. Probably something like, "Why is this hairless idiot wearing a windshield?" I gave it as much distance as possible and continued. June later asked why my speed graph showed a sudden drop. I said whale. He nodded immediately. Some explanations do not need detail. 700 miles. 800. My muscles started burning. Not normal fatigue. Deeper fatigue. My power let me maintain impossible speed. But I was still doing something. I still had to move. My arms still cycled. My legs still kicked. My mind still had to remain alert. At 900 miles, I seriously considered stopping. Then Victor called into the support channel. I did not know he had been given access. He said, "I heard you're slowing down." I told him to go away. He said Sea Wraith 4 had already completed a 1,000-mile simulation. I said simulations did not get muscle cramps. He said machines also did not complain about tropical gel. I asked how he knew about that. June had apparently sent him a clip. Traitor. Victor said, "Finish the route, fish boy." I hate being called fish boy. I accelerated. Spite is not recognized by sports nutritionists as a fuel source, but it should be. I covered the final 100 miles faster than the previous 100. When the endpoint appeared on my display, I had enough energy left for one final sprint. I crossed the line at over 400 miles per hour. Then I slowed, surfaced, and climbed aboard the recovery vessel. Everyone cheered. June handed me a towel. May checked my condition. Leela video called because she was handling another event on shore. Victor sent a message that said, "Decent." I replied with a single middle finger emoji. Then I ate enough rice to frighten the ship's cook. The 1,000-mile test proved what we had suspected. I was not limited to channels and coastal hops anymore. I could cross real ocean distances. The only question was how far, and the world had a very obvious suggestion. Cross an ocean, not a sea, not a channel, an ocean. The moment journalists started asking, my stomach tightened. I had crossed 1,000 miles under controlled conditions. A full ocean crossing could be several thousand depending on the route. Weather could change, equipment could fail, currents could shift. My body could fatigue. Navigation errors at those distances mattered. For the first time in a long time, I did not immediately say yes. Then June did something unexpectedly intelligent. He told me not to do it yet. I thought he was joking. He was serious. He said everyone was treating my speed like it meant I was invincible. It did not. The ocean was still huge. We should build up gradually. I stared at him. He asked why I looked offended. I said hearing responsible advice from him felt like watching a raccoon file taxes. He told me to kiss his ass. I said there he was, but he was right. So instead of crossing an ocean immediately, We created the most ridiculous training plan in maritime history. A series of escalating crossings, 1,200 miles, 1,500, 2,000, different weather, different temperatures, different currents, night swimming, navigation failures, emergency stops, equipment replacement at sea. We would turn me from a fast swimmer into something closer to a self-propelled expedition vessel. I thought that was ambitious. Then Victor announced his own plan. He was building a new craft specifically to beat me across 2,000 miles of open ocean. Not a sprint, an endurance race. Sea Wraith 4 would use hybrid turbine systems, support refueling, and an automated navigation package. The announcement video ended with Victor looking into the camera and saying, "Kai, mornings won't save you forever." I watched it twice. Then I checked my current top speed, 438 miles per hour. I checked the race date, 6 weeks away. By then, I would be around 480. I smiled. Victor had built a boat to chase a number. The problem was that my number kept leaving. The 2,000-mile race was announced as the Ocean Endurance Exhibition, which sounded respectable enough to trick adults into approving it. In reality, it was Victor and me spending a small fortune to answer the question, what if a boat and a human idiot refused to lose for half a day? The route started near a remote island chain and ended at a massive offshore finish zone. We would not pass near major shipping lanes. Support vessels were positioned along parallel corridors. Weather aircraft watched the route. Rescue helicopters remained on standby. Victor insisted Sea Wraith 4 was ready. May insisted I was ready. Leela insisted the contracts contained language making it legally clear that nobody was allowed to improvise anything stupid. June asked how the contract defined stupid. Lila pointed at him and said, "Anything you suggest?" He looked genuinely wounded. Sea Wraith 4 was beautiful. Victor had abandoned the obsession with pure top speed. This craft was longer and more stable than the previous version. It carried extra fuel. Its foil system could adjust to varying sea states. The cockpit was sealed for long-distance operation. It even had a tiny sleeping compartment, although Victor said he would not use it during the race. I asked if it had a bathroom. He said yes. I said that was unfair. He said, "You literally swim in the bathroom." I had no response. June whispered, "He cooked you." I hated everyone. The race began at noon. Victor launched first because Sea Wraith needed a controlled acceleration lane. I started 2 minutes later. He had argued for a 10-minute head start. I had agreed. Then his engineers saw my latest test speed and changed their minds. 2 minutes. That was all the generosity they wanted. Sea Wraith vanished toward the horizon. I entered the water. May gave me the countdown. Then I moved. At 480 miles per hour, distance became something my brain measured differently. 100 miles was no longer a journey. It was a section. 200 miles was a meal interval. 500 miles was the point where my neck started complaining. I held around 350 for the opening stretch. Victor stayed near 400. He gained distance. That was expected. His machine could cruise hard while I needed to manage fatigue. The race was not about who led after 1 hour. It was about who was still moving efficiently after 4. At 300 miles, Sea Wraith was nearly 80 miles ahead. The commentators on the live stream lost their minds. For the first time, Victor looked dominant. June read me selected messages over the radio. One said, "Kai got nerfed." Another said, "Bro finally met his patch notes." I told June to stop reading comments. He read one more. It said, "Imagine losing to a boat after making swimming your entire personality." I increased speed by 20 miles per hour. Me immediately told June to stop weaponizing social media against my energy plan. He apologized. Then he privately messaged me 3 more comments. I blocked him through my wrist interface. At 500 miles, Victor made his first planned fuel stop. A support tanker ran parallel at reduced speed while Sea Wraith connected to an automated transfer hose. The process was incredibly advanced. It took 12 minutes. I passed the refueling zone while eating gel from a pouch strapped to my chest. Victor saw me go by. I saw him raise one hand from the cockpit window. I could not tell if he was waving or flipping me off. Probably both. Now I led. At 700 miles, weather worsened. Not a storm, but wind increased and waves built. Victor's larger foil system handled it better than the earlier Sea Wraith. He started gaining again. I went deeper. That helped. But staying submerged created another issue. My breathing unit had limited capacity. I had to surface periodically to switch canisters from the small reserve pack on my back. Changing one while being tossed by waves was annoying. Changing one while trying not to lose race pace was worse. At 900 miles, I surfaced for a swap. A wave slapped me directly in the face before I got the shield sealed. Salt water went up my nose. I am telling you now, magical speed does not protect dignity. I floated in the middle of a 2,000-mile international race coughing like a haunted lawnmower while Victor gained 20 miles on me. June asked if I needed medical help. I said, no. My sinuses just got pressure washed by Poseidon's bidet. The medical channel went silent. Then someone on one of the support vessels laughed so loudly they forgot to mute their microphone. I switched canisters and dove. At 1,000 miles, we were almost even. Halfway. That was when Sea Wraith 4 developed a foil sensor problem. Nothing catastrophic. But its left side control system started reporting inconsistent pressure data. Victor had to reduce speed while the onboard computer recalibrated. The race rules allowed support communication, but no external physical repair unless he stopped at a service vessel. He chose to keep moving. I passed him. As I went by, I slowed enough to look toward the cockpit. Victor pointed at me. Then he pointed forward. It was the closest thing to a conversation we could have at sea. Keep going. I nodded. Then I accelerated. At 1,200 miles, I had a 50-mile lead. At 1,300, Victor's sensor stabilized and he came hunting. At 1,400, my right forearm fin jammed halfway open. I immediately lost directional stability. At nearly 400 miles per hour, half a fin was enough to turn my body several degrees offline. I corrected too hard. The water grabbed me. For one horrible second, I spun. My speed dropped automatically as my body lost a stable swimming posture, which probably saved me from turning into the world's first human skipping stone to file a lawsuit against the ocean. I surfaced dizzy. May ordered me to stop completely. I obeyed. The fin was stuck. The emergency release would remove it entirely, but swimming at high speed with only one fin would be unbalanced. We had replacement parts on a support boat 20 miles away. At normal maritime speed, that would take too long. The race could be over. Then I remembered the courier system. Our stabilized cargo pod. It was on the support ship. I told May to load the replacement forearm unit into the smallest delivery capsule and drop it into the water. She understood immediately. The problem was distance. I was 20 miles from the vessel. Going there and back would cost time. June suggested something else. The support ship could launch the pod toward me using its tow drone. The drone was nowhere near fast enough to cover 20 miles quickly, but it did not need to. I could meet it halfway. So I removed the damaged fin, secured the bare forearm, and swam at a slower speed toward the support corridor. Without the fins, I could still move fast. I just could not safely use full speed. 8 minutes later, I found the tow drone and capsule. I grabbed the replacement unit, attached it, tested the controls, and turned back toward the course. The entire repair cost me 16 minutes. During that time, Victor passed. He built a 70-mile lead. June unblocked himself on my radio somehow. He said, "Good news. The internet has decided you're washed." I told him if he read one more comment, I would drag the support ship backward all the way home. He said, "That would actually be incredible content." I blocked him again. 1,500 miles. 500 left. I was behind. My arms hurt. My shoulders hurt. My neck hurt. There was a spot under the harness near my ribs that had been rubbing for hours, and now felt like a tiny demon was using a cheese grater on my skin. But the repaired fin worked. Sea Wraith had a fuel stop coming, and every day of training had taught me one thing. I did not need to swim at maximum all the time. I only needed to know when maximum mattered. So I held back. Victor stayed ahead. At 1,600 miles, he led by 60. At 1,700, 55. Then his second refueling stop began. I accelerated. 400. 430. 450. The ocean became a tunnel of noise. My body locked into the streamlined position May had drilled into me. The gap collapsed. 40 miles. 30. 20. Victor disconnected from the tanker and accelerated again. I was 15 miles behind. 300 miles remained. Now it was a sprint. A 300-mile sprint. That sentence would have gotten me diagnosed with something a year earlier. Victor pushed Sea Wraith harder than its endurance plan allowed. I pushed myself harder than May wanted. She kept warning me to monitor fatigue. I said I was fine. She said my heart rate suggested I was a liar. I said my heart had always been dramatic. She said that was not medically meaningful. 200 miles left. The gap was 10. 150. 8. 100. 5. Sea Wraith's engines were still strong. But Victor had been inside that cockpit for hours. Machines were not the only things with pilots. He was tired too. At 50 miles, I saw him. A silver shape ahead. I came closer. The water behind the craft shimmered with disturbed flow. Victor knew I could use it. He changed course slightly. I anticipated the move and stayed wide. 20 miles. We were nearly side by side. 10. I surfaced near him. He looked through the cockpit. I raised one hand. He raised one. Then both of us pushed everything. Sea Wraith screamed over the water. I dropped below the surface and hit my maximum. The final miles became numbers in my display. 5. 4. 3. My body felt like it was vibrating. 2. Victor was half a length ahead. 1. I shifted slightly deeper to find cleaner water. The finish gate approached. Sea Wraith's nose was ahead of my head, and the boat touched a patch of rougher chop. Its control system made one tiny correction. It lost almost nothing. Almost. I crossed the finish gate 0.18 seconds first, less than a quarter of a second after 2,000 miles. I slowed over several miles because stopping quickly at that speed would be idiotic. Then I surfaced and floated on my back. I did not cheer. I did not pump my fist. I just laughed. I laughed until my chest hurt. Victor circled back 10 minutes later. He opened the cockpit and sat on the hull. Neither of us said anything for a while. Then he asked if I had any food. I had one remaining energy gel. I threw it toward him. It landed in the water. He stared at it floating beside the boat. Then he said he would rather starve. I understood. Tropical Burst had claimed another victim. The race became legendary online. Not because I won, because it had finally been close. People loved Victor for refusing to give up. People loved me because I was still apparently a glitch wearing goggles. The clip of us finishing side by side was replayed everywhere. Then people discovered another detail. During my fin repair, the support drone camera had recorded me trying to attach the replacement unit with numb fingers. I had dropped a tiny locking pin into the water. I caught it before it sank. Then I had shouted, "If this little metal bastard goes into the ocean, I'm becoming a monk." That sentence became a sound clip. For a month, every video of someone dropping anything used my voice. Phone slipping off a couch, toast falling from a plate, a bowling ball rolling towards someone's foot. My humiliation had achieved remix culture. After the race, I took 2 weeks off major events. My speed kept increasing anyway. That was always the strange part. Rest did not stop the power. Vacation did not stop it. The universe did not care that my shoulders needed ice packs. Every sunrise added another mile per hour to the account. I tried spending a week doing normal things. Movies, video games, restaurants. I visited my parents. My mother still treated the entire supernatural speed situation like a weird career choice. She asked if I was eating enough vegetables. I told her I had crossed 2,000 miles of ocean under my own power. She said that did not answer the question. My father had become obsessed with tracking my races. He had a wall map covered in colored strings connecting places I had swum. It looked like the evidence board of a detective investigating an international fish conspiracy. He proudly showed me every route. Then he pointed to an empty section across a major ocean. He did not say anything. I knew what he meant. Not yet. The world still wanted the big crossing. Offers came from broadcasters, sponsors, research groups, shipping companies, and people who clearly just wanted their logo seen by everyone on Earth. One cryptocurrency company offered me a horrifying amount of money to name the crossing after a coin with a cartoon squid on it. Leela rejected them before I finished reading the email. June asked how much they offered. She told him. He fell out of his chair. Then he crawled back up and said, "Kai, hear me out. Dignity is temporary. Beach house is forever. I said no. He asked if I had considered 2 beach houses. I said no. Lila removed him from the room. The most useful proposal came from a global maritime safety organization. They wanted to create standardized rules for my long-distance swims. That sounded funny until I realized they had a point. I was moving through international waters at speeds faster than many aircraft during takeoff. Other vessels needed to know where I was. I needed identification signals. I needed navigation lighting for night operations. I needed emergency procedures. For several weeks, serious experts had meetings about whether a 19-year-old man in a reinforced swimsuit should be treated as a vessel under certain navigation rules. I attended one meeting remotely. A lawyer asked if I had a hull. I said no. Another asked if my body counted as propulsion machinery. I said I hope not. A third asked whether I could carry a maritime identification beacon. I said yes. Then someone asked if I should be required to display port and starboard navigation lights. June, who had somehow entered the call, suggested attaching a red light to my left butt cheek and a green light to my right. The meeting stopped. An elderly maritime official removed his glasses. Leela muted June. I could see her texting him furiously. Later, he showed me the message. It said, "I will bury you under Admiralty law." We eventually developed a practical system. I carried an active transponder that identified my position to ships. My wrist system received traffic warnings. For nighttime tests, small lights mounted on my shoulders and back made me visible without turning me into a glowing underwater Christmas decoration. I also carried a deployable locator buoy in case I had to stop unexpectedly. The system worked, mostly. On the first night test, a cargo vessel contacted our control team because my transponder icon was moving so fast across their navigation display that they thought the software had malfunctioned. The officer asked what type of craft I was. Our operator said, "Swimmer." There was a long silence. Then the officer said, "Say again." Our operator repeated it. Another silence. Then a different voice in the background said, "No way." I still have that recording. It makes me happy. Night swimming became one of my favorite experiences. Not at maximum speed, just fast enough to travel. The stars above, dark water below, my suit lights glowing faintly, the horizon invisible. It felt like flying through space while getting salt water in places salt water should never have a passport to visit. That poetic feeling lasted until I surfaced one night and discovered a squid stuck to my shoulder. I screamed. The squid released me immediately, probably because I screamed louder than it expected prey to scream. June watched the body camera footage 12 times. He edited dramatic music under it. I threatened legal action. He reminded me he was broke. Fair point. By the time I was ready for another major challenge, my maximum speed had passed 500 miles per hour. 500. That number changed the conversation. At that speed, some cross-ocean routes no longer sounded like expeditions measured in days. They sounded like work shifts. The fastest passenger ships in history could not come close. Modern cargo ships moved at a tiny fraction of my speed. Even the specialized racing machines Victor built were struggling to stay relevant. The ocean had become my highway, and there was one route everyone kept circling on maps. More than 3,000 miles of open water. A real ocean crossing. No island hopping shortcut. No coastal comfort. Start on one continent, finish on another. I stared at the route in May's lab. She had weather models, current maps, support zones, emergency diversions, aircraft coverage, and backup equipment listed across 6 screens. Leela had legal teams working in 3 countries. June had already designed a shirt that said, "I crossed an ocean and all I got was trench ass." I took the shirt away from him. He said it was medically possible. I said that did not make it merchandise. Then I looked back at the route. 3,000 miles. At a conservative average speed, maybe 8 or 9 hours of actual movement, plus feeding and equipment checks. A year earlier, I had struggled to beat June in a pool. Now I was looking at an ocean like it was a commute. I said yes. The ocean crossing announcement broke the internet in a way none of my races had before. People understood a pool record. They understood beating a speedboat. They understood racing a cruise ship because cruise ships are basically floating apartment buildings with casinos. But swimming from one continent to another before bedtime was a sentence that made people stop scrolling. The broadcast rights sold in days. Weather networks wanted live tracking. Schools planned watch parties. Maritime museums asked for my suit afterward. One restaurant chain announced a 3,000-mile meal deal even though nobody understood what that meant. Victor announced he would not race me. That surprised everyone. When a reporter asked why, he said, "Because I'm competitive, not stupid." Then he added that Sea Wraith 5 was being designed for a future rematch at higher speeds. Of course it was. Instead, Victor joined the support operation as an engineering advisor. He claimed he was there to make sure my equipment did not fail. I knew the truth. He wanted front row seats in case I did something embarrassing. June respected this deeply. The route planning became absurdly detailed. We divided the crossing into sectors. Each sector had weather limits, alternate paths, emergency support positions, and specific target speeds. We planned feeding intervals, air canister changes, suit inspections, medical checks, navigation backups, even bathroom strategy. That final meeting was the worst meeting I have ever attended. A sports physiologist, 2 doctors, May, Leela, and Victor sat around a table discussing how a person traveling hundreds of miles per hour through seawater should handle basic biological needs. June was not allowed in the room. He still listened through the wall. When the doctor explained the simplest solution, June's voice came faintly through the door saying, "So the Atlantic is about to become an employee restroom." Leela stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. I covered my face. Victor laughed into his sleeve. Somehow, we finished the meeting. The night before the crossing, I barely slept. Not from fear exactly. Excitement. Pressure. The weird knowledge that millions of people would wake up and watch a dot with my name move across a map. I stood on the hotel balcony at 2 a.m. looking at the black ocean. 3,000 miles. Even with my power, it looked endless. That was the good part. For months, speed had made everything feel small. This did not feel small. Not yet. At sunrise, we moved to the offshore start platform. The sea was calm, cold air, clear horizon. My suit had been inspected 3 times. My transponder was active. My navigation system had redundant route data. A thin, streamlined pack carried emergency supplies and spare breathing canisters. I wore the same rubber duck from the cruise race clipped inside a pouch on my chest. That was not part of the engineering plan. June called it morale equipment. May pretended not to notice. Before the start, Leela asked whether I wanted to say anything to the cameras. I thought about giving some dramatic speech. Something about human limits. Something about crossing boundaries. Then I remembered who I was. I looked into the camera and said, "If I get halfway across and realize I forgot my wallet, I'm going to be so pissed." Lila closed her eyes. June cheered. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. The entire support platform went quiet. 3, 2, 1. I dove. The first 100 miles were deliberately boring. That was the plan. I held around 300 miles per hour and let my body settle into rhythm. My breathing was steady. My shoulders felt good. The suit pressure looked normal. The support aircraft moved along parallel paths. On the global tracking map, I later learned that my position crossed the first 100-mile marker so quickly that some viewers thought the animation had skipped. At mile 200, I increased to 350. At 300, I went to 400. The coast behind me had vanished long ago. Only ocean remained. Then I met the first ship. Not physically. We had planned safe separation. A container ship several miles north of my course had departed from my starting continent almost 4 days earlier. 4 days. It had been traveling nonstop. I had been swimming for less than an hour. Our tracking system showed our paths would be roughly parallel for several minutes. The ship knew I was coming. Its crew gathered on the outer decks. I moved closer to the edge of my approved corridor while maintaining distance. Then I saw it, a massive wall of stacked containers moving across the water. For a few moments, I matched its speed from far away. It looked almost stationary to me. It hit harder than any race. This ship had been crossing ocean day and night while I slept, ate breakfast, complained about my suit straps, and started hours later. Now I was beside it. Then I accelerated. The ship slid backward across my vision. I passed its bow. The crew waved. I waved back. One crew member held up a banner. It said, Please take container 804. We're late. I laughed hard enough to swallow part of my mouthpiece. Jun came over the radio asking why my breathing had changed. I told him about the sign. He said I should have taken the container. I said it probably weighed 20 tons. He said I needed to believe in myself. I muted him for 15 minutes. The container ship disappeared behind me. 4 days of its progress erased in minutes. That was the moment I truly understood what my power had become. Boats were not my rivals anymore. They were landmarks. At 500 miles, I performed the first scheduled inspection stop. A support aircraft dropped a bright orange flotation platform ahead of me. I slowed, climbed onto it, and let a remote camera inspect the suit seams while I drank a high-calorie mixture. The platform bobbed gently. For 6 minutes, I sat alone in the middle of the ocean eating compressed rice bars. The broadcast commentator apparently called it the loneliest lunch break on Earth. That sounded poetic. In reality, I was trying to open a sauce packet with wet gloves. It ripped wrong and sprayed chili paste directly onto my chest. I looked down at the red smear. For one terrifying second, I thought I had been injured. Then I smelled chili. I screamed into the radio. Who packed a condiment that looks exactly like arterial bleeding? Jun immediately admitted it was him. I told him, "You chaotic little shit. I almost diagnosed myself with death." Victor laughed so hard over comms that he had to disconnect. The sauce was good, though. I finished eating, folded the platform's recovery beacon, and returned to the water. At 700 miles, conditions changed. A long swell moved across the route from the northwest. Not dangerous, just annoying at the surface. I dropped deeper. 15 feet. 20. The water smoothed out. My suit lights automatically adjusted. At 400 miles per hour underwater, the world turned into a rushing blue tunnel. I used short breathing cycles with the reserve system and surfaced every few minutes. That rhythm worked until my navigation display suddenly flickered. Then it went black. I stopped accelerating immediately. Primary display failure. The backup system was still running, but its screen was mounted lower on my wrist and harder to read at speed. They ordered me to reduce pace. I did. The support team checked telemetry. My GPS signal was still active. The issue was only the main display. We had trained for this. I could continue using audio navigation cues through the earpiece. Left 2 degrees. Hold depth. Course stable. Increase 1 degree south. It felt like swimming inside a video game with the screen turned off and someone shouting directions from another room. Then Jun's voice entered the channel. Obstacle ahead. I tensed. What obstacle? Water. I nearly screamed. May removed him from navigation communications. Victor later thanked her on behalf of civilization. We decided to replace the display at the next support point rather than stop immediately. For more than 100 miles, I swam almost entirely by audio instruction and backup compass. It was strangely calming once I trusted it. No numbers in front of my face. No speed obsession. Just direction, breathing, movement. Then a voice in my earpiece said, "Kai, you're drifting slightly right." I corrected. The voice said, "Too much." I corrected left. A little more. I followed. Then I realized it was Victor. May had put him on navigation duty. I said, "You enjoying this?" He said, "More than you can imagine." I said if he guided me into a jellyfish swarm, I would sink every Sea Wraith prototype by sitting on it. He replied that my ass was not an approved maritime weapon. Jun somehow got back on the channel long enough to say, "Not with that attitude." May disconnected all 3 of us for 30 seconds. At 900 miles, a fast support vessel met me at a stationary service zone. I climbed onto a floating repair mat while 2 technicians replaced the display unit. The entire procedure took 11 minutes. While they worked, I checked the global tracking map on a tablet. My route already stretched across a huge chunk of ocean. Behind me, the container ship was a tiny dot near where I had passed it. Ahead, other vessels moved slowly along their own routes. For the first time, I looked at commercial shipping traffic not as individual ships, but as a field of moving points. I was slicing through that field faster than anything on the water. It was cool. It was also ridiculous. The technician finished the display repair. I tested it. Perfect. Then I noticed one of them had placed a small sticker under the screen. It was a cartoon snail wearing a captain's hat. Underneath it said, "Fastest boat." I left the sticker. 1,000 miles. The crossing had barely begun to feel real, and I was already a third of the way across. I increased speed again. At this point, the broadcast showed something that became one of the most replayed graphics of the event. A normal passenger ship on a similar route would take days. A cargo ship could take longer depending on speed and stops. My projected time was measured in hours. The commentator placed 3 icons on a map. Ship. Airplane. Me. The airplane still destroyed me, obviously. I was fast in water, not magical enough to outswim a jet. But the fact that my icon belonged on the same graphic at all caused a wave of memes. One showed a family packing luggage for an ocean trip while I stood outside holding goggles. Another showed airport security asking me if I had any liquids over the limit while I pointed at the Atlantic. That one was pretty good. At 1,200 miles, I encountered heavy rain. Visibility dropped. The surface became a mess of spray and impacts. I went deeper again. Lightning was far away and not directly threatening, but the weather system forced a route adjustment. We angled south. That added distance. I did not care. I had plenty of speed. What I did not have was unlimited food. The detour meant my next supply point would be delayed. May asked whether I wanted an unscheduled drone feed. I said yes. A long-range drone launched from a support aircraft carrying 2 nutrition capsules. It reached the release zone ahead of me and dropped the first one. I slowed. The capsule hit the water. A seagull appeared from nowhere. I still do not understand where this bird came from in the middle of open ocean during ugly weather, but it landed beside the capsule and immediately began attacking the flotation ribbon. I approached at 20 miles per hour. The seagull looked at me. I looked at the seagull. It pecked the capsule. I shouted, "That is 800 calories, you feathered tax criminal." The bird did not care. It grabbed part of the ribbon and tried to fly. The capsule was too heavy. I reached it first. The seagull attacked my glove. I had crossed 1,200 miles of ocean at impossible speed, and now my progress was being delayed by a bird with the moral character of a parking ticket scam. I splashed it gently. It flew away screaming insults in seagull language. I ate the capsule while watching the sky in case it returned with family. June said I had won another vehicle race. I asked what vehicle. He said bird. I muted him again. At 1,500 miles, halfway, we had another scheduled stop. This one was longer. Medical check. Suit inspection. Food. Hydration. I climbed onto a large inflatable platform deployed from an escort vessel. The ship stayed a safe distance away while a small tender approached slowly. May stepped onto the platform carrying diagnostic equipment. Seeing her in person after hours of radio voices felt weird. She checked my hands, eyes, shoulders, heart rate, and skin. Then she inspected the harness rub point under my ribs. It was irritated but manageable. She applied protective dressing. I ate noodles from a sealed cup. Real noodles. Hot noodles. I nearly cried. After hours of gels and compressed bars, broth tasted like civilization had personally apologized to me. Victor arrived on the tender and sat on the platform edge. He handed me a bottle of sports drink. I asked how the crossing looked from the support side. He said, "Boring." I told him to swim it. He said, "I have a functioning sense of self-preservation." Then he admitted the pace was incredible. That meant more coming from him than from anyone else. I asked about Sea Wraith 5. He said he had changed the design again. The target speed was now over 600 miles per hour. I almost spit noodles into the ocean. 600. I was not there yet, but I would be. The number lodged in my brain. Lila's voice came over the platform speaker and reminded us that this was not the time to plan another race. Victor and I both said, "We're not." Nobody believed us. I returned to the water. The second half began. At 1,600 miles, fatigue finally became serious. My body still worked, but every movement felt more expensive. I reduced speed to 250. That felt almost slow now. The absurdity was not lost on me. I remembered when 40 miles per hour had felt impossible. Now I was recovering at a speed faster than most boats could ever reach. At 1,800 miles, the sky cleared. The sea flattened. Sunlight broke through. Perfect conditions. I increased speed gradually. 300, 350, 400, then 450. My muscles complained, but my power responded. The miles disappeared. At 2000, the support team announced I had just passed the point where the nearest conventional ship on a comparable route was more than a full day behind my effective travel schedule. I asked them to repeat that. They did. A full day. I had started that morning. That ship had started yesterday. I was still ahead. I laughed inside the mouthpiece. Then June said, "Imagine being a captain and getting overtaken by a dude whose luggage is 1 rubber duck and 6 tubes of carbohydrate paste." I said, "7 tubes," he said. My mistake. Very professional. At 2,200 miles, another weird problem appeared. My left boot panel began vibrating. Not dangerous at first. Just annoying. At high speed, the vibration grew. May told me to stop for inspection. I slowed to a float and looked down. A small strip of outer material had partially separated near the ankle. The suit remained sealed, but the flap created drag. We had repair tape designed for underwater emergency patches. I removed a strip from my pack and tried to wrap it around the boot. The ocean swell made the job annoying. Every time I aligned the tape, a wave moved my leg. Finally, I got it attached. I pressed the seam. Then I realized the tape had also stuck to the fingers of my glove. I pulled. My hand would not come free. I had effectively taped my own hand to my ankle in the middle of the ocean. I floated there twisted sideways trying to separate industrial adhesive, while May asked why my camera angle had become strange. I did not answer. Then June saw the footage. He screamed laughing. I said, "If this clip leaks, I will crawl through your plumbing like a cursed mermaid and ruin every toilet you own." He laughed harder because apparently threats have no power against a man with no property. I eventually freed my glove and finished the repair. The clip leaked. Of course it did. By the time I finished the crossing, people had already made stickers of me folded over with the caption, "Maintenance Mode." 2,500 miles. 500 left. The destination continent was still beyond the horizon. But mentally I could feel it. The support team became louder. The global viewership climbed. Ports near the finish filled with spectators. Boats had to be kept outside a wide exclusion zone, because apparently thousands of people wanted to sail into the ocean and watch me arrive like I was a migrating celebrity salmon. Leela begged everyone to stay behind official barriers. At 2,700 miles, I saw another cruise ship far off the route. The passengers had tracking data and knew I was nearby. The captain contacted our support team and asked if I could do a safe distant pass. May said only if I felt good. I did. So I angled slightly. The ship appeared on the horizon. I stayed well away but close enough to be visible. Thousands of people crowded the decks. Then music started playing over the ship's external speakers. It was some dramatic orchestral song. I could hear it faintly across the water whenever I surfaced. The entire ship began flashing lights. I had accidentally entered the dumbest victory parade in maritime history, 300 miles before finishing. Then the passengers started chanting my name. I was exhausted, salt-crusted, covered in repair tape, and carrying enough energy gel residue to attract ants from another continent. I still grinned. I accelerated past them. The ship's horn sounded behind me. That moment carried me for the next 100 miles. 200 left, then 150. At 100, I received the first direct signal from the finish zone. A radio beacon. The destination was no longer just coordinates. It was there. I pushed harder. My current maximum was above 500 miles per hour. But there was no reason to use all of it after hours of swimming. May told me to keep the final approach controlled. I agreed. Then June said hundreds of thousands of people were watching the coastal cameras. I increased speed anyway. May yelled at him. He claimed he had only provided factual information. 50 miles. The horizon changed. A dark line appeared. Land. I had seen land after long swims before. Never like this. A different continent. I had entered the ocean that morning from one side of the world, and now another side was rising in front of me. 30 miles. Support aircraft formed distant escort positions. 20. The finish zone lights appeared. 10. Crowds filled the waterfront beyond the protected harbor area. 5. I slowed. For once, I wanted the last part to last longer. I passed the final offshore marker. Then the official finish gate. My tracker confirmed it. Crossing complete. I had swum more than 3,000 miles across open ocean in a single day. Boats that had departed before me were still at sea. Some would remain at sea for days. I floated there for a second, looking at the coast. Then I heard June over the radio. He said, "Kai, check your chest pouch." I reached inside. The rubber duck was still there. I pulled it out and held it above my head. The crowd on shore could barely see me, but the broadcast cameras could. The image went everywhere. A ridiculous yellow duck held above an ocean I had just crossed faster than ships could carry people through it. That should have been the heroic moment. Then a wave hit me from behind. The duck flew out of my hand. I panicked harder than I had during the navigation failure. I dove after it. The global audience watched me complete a historic transoceanic swim and immediately spend 40 seconds chasing a 6-inch bath toy through the finish zone. I caught it. When I climbed onto the platform, June hugged me. Then he whispered, "That was the least dignified ending possible." I told him, "Touch my duck and I'll send you back across the ocean without a boat." He believed me. The crossing was over, but my speed increase was not. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel on the other continent. My entire body hurt. My hair felt like salt had become a permanent lifestyle choice. There were flowers, messages, awards invitations, interview requests, sponsor offers, and enough missed calls to make my phone feel dangerous. I opened my eyes, and I knew. 1 more mile per hour. Just like every other day, I had crossed an ocean. The universe's response was basically, "Cool. Here's another one." The problem with doing something impossible is that people immediately start asking what impossible thing comes next. I had not even finished breakfast after the ocean crossing before a reporter asked if I planned to swim around the world. I was holding a spoon. I looked at the spoon, then at her, then back at the spoon. I said, "Can I finish cereal before we add planetary objectives?" The clip went viral. Apparently I had become relatable again because I wanted breakfast before circumnavigation. For the next month, I refused every giant record attempt. I still swam, because avoiding water entirely would have been like owning a dragon and only using it to heat soup. But I kept the distances shorter. 100 miles, 200, maybe 400 if the weather was nice. Those were recovery days now. That fact made me deeply uncomfortable if I thought about it too long. My top speed continued rising. 530, 540, 550. May adjusted my equipment every week. Victor adjusted his boat designs every hour. Lila adjusted her expectations downward whenever June entered a room. And June discovered that my new fame could be used for something incredibly dangerous. Restaurant reservations. He started calling fully booked places and saying he worked with Sato. This was technically true. Then he would ask if they had a table. Some did. I found out when he invited me to dinner at an exclusive seafood restaurant that normally had a 3-month wait. I asked how he got the reservation. He avoided eye contact. Leela investigated. 5 minutes later, she confiscated his phone. I told him using my name for noodles was shameless. He said I had literally crossed an ocean for publicity. I said that was different. He asked how. I said mine involved more chafing. The seafood restaurant gave me a free dessert anyway. I felt morally compromised and ate it. The next serious project came from an unexpected place. Postal services. Not glamorous. Not dramatic. But incredibly funny once people realized what it meant. A coastal postal authority wanted to test whether I could move urgent documents between remote islands faster than aircraft logistics when runway access was limited. They gave me a locked waterproof case with official seals. Inside were ordinary test envelopes. Nothing important. The whole thing was just a trial. Still, I felt absurdly powerful. I had crossed an ocean faster than cargo ships. Now I was carrying mail like the world's angriest pigeon. I completed the first route in 12 minutes. The normal mailboat took 3 hours. The postal workers at the destination stamped the envelopes with a special mark reading, "Delivered by swimmer." Collectors went insane. The test envelopes became valuable almost instantly. June had mailed one to himself. Leela asked if he had planned to sell it. He said no. Then his face did something suspicious. She took the envelope. He acted like she had stolen his inheritance. A second trial carried legal documents between islands. A third carried replacement passport materials. Then one municipality asked if I could deliver election paperwork. Leela rejected that before I even heard the full proposal. She said anything involving politics, and my name needed 10 lawyers and holy water. I was happy to stay away. Instead, I delivered a birthday card. That was not official. A little girl on a small island had become a fan after the cruise race. Her father worked at a weather station. He sent a message asking if I could sign something for her. I did more than sign it. I put the card in my waterproof pouch and swam it there myself during a training route. When I arrived, the family was waiting near the dock. The girl stared at me like I had climbed out of a cartoon. I handed her the card. Then she asked the question children always ask when adults are too polite. Do fish get scared of you? I thought about the flying fish incident. I said, some of them should. Her father laughed. She did not. She looked very serious and told me to be nice to fish. I promised. That promise lasted 3 days. On my next training swim, a large tuna collided with my thigh at low speed. It hurt. I shouted underwater. The tuna disappeared. I surfaced and yelled, "That one started it." No one had accused me of anything. May asked who I was talking to. I said the moral authority of a 7-year-old. She did not ask more. My increasing speed also created a new form of tourism. People wanted to watch me swim past ships. This was unsafe. So Lila and May worked with event organizers to create designated viewing zones where boats could anchor far from a controlled route. The first one happened in a bay with a long open water corridor. Dozens of boats anchored outside the exclusion zone. I made 3 passes, first at 50 miles per hour, then 150, then 300. Even from far away, the last pass sent a visible white trail behind me. People cheered. Then June convinced the organizers to play a speedometer graphic on a giant floating screen. That was fine. What was not fine was the sound effect he chose. Every time I passed 300 miles per hour, the screen played the sound of a microwave finishing. Thousands of people heard beep 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 while I tore across the bay. I found out afterward. I asked why. June said, "Because you're cooked." I told him that did not even make sense. He said comedy had moved beyond my generation. We are the same age. I genuinely considered drowning him in ankle-deep water. The event was successful enough to inspire a racing league built around machines trying to beat my current speed. I did not participate in every event. Sometimes engineers raced each other. Hydrofoils, turbine boats, experimental surface craft, autonomous vehicles, but once every few months, they invited me as the final benchmark. The format was simple. Machines competed all weekend. The winner earned the right to race me. It became known unofficially as the boss fight. I hated that name for exactly 10 seconds. Then I saw the entrance animation they made for me. Dark water, a speed number rising, my silhouette underwater. Then a rubber duck floated across the screen. I accepted the name immediately. The first boss fight challenger was not Victor. A team from Northern Europe built a compact hydrofoil called Needlefish. It was astonishingly fast and much cheaper than Sea Wraith. Their secret was simplicity. Tiny hull, 1 pilot, minimal fuel, short race. They had designed it for exactly one thing. Maximum speed over 20 miles. It reached 570 miles per hour in testing. My maximum that week was 568. Perfect match. The team celebrated when they saw the numbers. Then rain delayed the race 2 days. I gained 2 miles per hour. Their engineer stared at the revised graphic and said, "This is bullshit." He said it on live television. Nobody could blame him. The race still happened. Needlefish launched like a bullet. For the first 10 miles, it stayed ahead. Then I reached my full speed. We were almost equal. The difference came down to control. Needlefish needed an incredibly narrow stability window. Every tiny wave forced its computer to adjust the foils. I could shift depth. At mile 15, I dropped 3 feet below the surface where the flow was smoother. My speed stayed constant. Needlefish lost half a mile per hour to Chop. That was enough. I won by less than 1 second. The pilot climbed out afterward and demanded a rematch scheduled for the next day before I could gain another mile per hour. Everyone laughed. He was serious. I agreed. The rematch happened 24 hours later. My maximum was 1 mile per hour faster. Needlefish's team changed its foil software overnight. This time, the craft handled Chop better. It beat me by 0.06 seconds. The crowd exploded. I was thrilled. Not because I liked losing, because someone had found a way to fight the calendar. The team had improved faster in one night than my automatic upgrade. That had not happened in a long time. I congratulated them, and their engineer made the mistake of saying, "See you next month." I stared at him. He stared at me. His smile faded as he did the math. Next month, I would be around 30 miles per hour faster. He said, "Actually, maybe next week." Smart man. The racing league became a festival of engineers trying to outrun time itself. Some teams brought absurd technology. One used a disposable rocket boost that lasted 12 seconds. Another used an electric hydrofoil covered in battery cooling channels. A university team built a tiny unmanned craft so light that strong wind nearly blew it off the trailer before the race. A group of hobbyists arrived with something that looked like a canoe, mated with a leaf blower. They called it Kevin. Nobody knew why. Kevin reached 93 miles per hour before the engine housing fell off. The crowd gave it a standing ovation. I signed the broken engine cover. June called Kevin the people's champion. Victor pretended to hate it, but later donated money to the team. I caught him. He said it was for engineering education. I said he loved Kevin. He told me to shut up. My celebrity also became impossible to manage near beaches. I could not do a casual ocean swim anymore without someone recognizing the suit. If I went near a public coast, people filmed. If I swam slowly, they asked if I was injured. If I swam quickly, officials asked whether the area had been cleared. So I started using remote beaches for ordinary training. One morning, I found what looked like the perfect empty stretch of coastline. No boats, no swimmers, no buildings. I entered the water in simple training gear and spent an hour doing slow technique drills. Then I noticed a man standing on the beach watching me through binoculars. I got out. He approached carefully. He was a park ranger. He asked if I was Kai Sato. I said yes. He asked if I knew the beach was part of a protected seal habitat. I froze. I looked down the coast. Sure enough, several seals were lying on rocks farther away. I had somehow chosen the one place where being the fast-swimming guy made me look like a potential marine life supervillain. I apologized immediately. The ranger said I had not disturbed them because I stayed far offshore, but future training needed approval. I promised. Then one seal slid into the water. It swam a little closer, keeping distance. I floated there. The seal stared at me. I stared back. It made a noise. I had no idea what it meant. June later said the seal was probably telling me to get the hell out of its server. I said he was not allowed to interpret wildlife. That became another rule. The rules list was getting long. No shark necklaces. No unapproved banana towing. No amphibious roller skate experiments. No political mail. No wildlife interpretation by June. My life required policies nobody should ever have to write. At 580 miles per hour, we discovered a new problem with acceleration. My ability let me reach the speed, but the distance required to do it safely kept growing. I could not simply go from 0 to 580 instantly. If I tried, the forces on my body and surrounding water became too violent. So we developed acceleration profiles. Gentle ramp for crowded waters. Standard ramp for open ocean. Aggressive ramp for racing. The aggressive profile still required miles of clear water. That changed race design. Start zones became enormous. Finish zones became enormous. Spectators had to stay farther away. The race league began using aircraft and satellite tracking because boats could not follow us anymore. That was another milestone I had not expected. The chase boats gave up. Not emotionally. Literally. They were too slow. At the first event without chase boats, I looked around before the start and felt weirdly lonely. No support craft beside the course. Only distant vessels, helicopters, and high-altitude drones. June said I had finally become too fast for production values. Then one drone company introduced a jet-powered camera drone that could follow me for short bursts. I was excited until I saw the price. I asked what happened if it crashed. The operator said, "We cry." Fair. We tested it at 300 miles per hour. The drone followed beautifully. At 400, it struggled. At 500, its battery temperature warning triggered. At full speed, it fell behind so fast that the camera view looked like I had been fired out of reality. June watched the playback and said, "Bro got ghosted by a drone. I told him I could ghost his body into international waters. He said that sentence was why I needed media training." Leela agreed. Then Victor finally unveiled Sea Wraith 5. He chose a private test facility with an enormous protected water corridor. The craft looked unreal. Longer than the previous models, needle nose, enclosed cockpit, retractable hydrofoils, hybrid turbine and rocket-assisted propulsion. The rocket system was not meant to push it the entire race. It was a short boost for acceleration and final sprinting. Victor had spent months solving the exact problem I now faced. How do you reach absurd speed quickly without destroying control? Sea Wraith 5's official target was 620 miles per hour. My maximum that morning was 593. For the first time in ages, he had built a real gap. 27 miles per hour. I walked around the craft slowly. Victor followed me with his arms crossed. I asked how much it cost. He said, "Don't." I asked if his accountants were okay. He said, "No." I asked if he still had a house. He said, "Several." I said then I did not feel bad. He told me the test run would happen that afternoon. Not a race. Just a speed attempt. He wanted me there. Sea Wraith 5 launched into calm water. At 200 miles per hour, it rose onto the foils. At 400, the main turbine screamed. At 500, the rocket boost ignited. A white plume erupted behind it. The craft accelerated so violently I felt the sound through the observation platform. 550, 580, 600, 610. Then the rocket shut down. Sea Wraith coasted and decelerated safely. The official peak appeared on the screen. 616 miles per hour. Victor had done it. He climbed out 20 minutes later, looking pale but ecstatic. I hugged him. Then I said, "I hate you." He said, "Good." The internet immediately asked when we were racing. Victor said 7 days. I laughed. 7 days would put me at 600 miles per hour exactly. Still 16 below his test peak. That was close enough to be interesting. May did not laugh. She said racing at those speeds required new safety modeling. Victor's engineers agreed. Lila asked whether any of us had considered doing something normal like golf. June said he would rather eat a wetsuit. Leela said the option remained available. The race was approved with strict limits. Long acceleration corridor. Straight course. Calm weather requirement. Remote location. No spectators within many miles. Victor could use one rocket boost. I could use any legal swimming technique, which was a hilarious phrase because my legal swimming technique was become a torpedo and pray. For 7 days, everyone waited. My speed rose. 594, 595, 596. Each morning felt like a countdown. On day 6, a storm system threatened the test zone. May warned the race might be delayed. Victor looked horrified. Not because of weather, because every delay made me faster. He checked the forecast every 10 minutes like a farmer whose crops were made of horsepower. The storm shifted away. Race day stayed clear. I woke up, 600 miles per hour. Exactly. The number sat in my mind with the familiar certainty. One more than yesterday. 600 total. I looked at myself in the mirror. Then I said, "This is some deeply stupid shit." No one was there. It felt important to say anyway. At the test corridor, Sea Wraith 5 waited on the water. Victor sat in the cockpit. I floated in my start zone several hundred yards away. The course stretched ahead farther than I could see. Aircraft tracked from above. The world watched through delayed safety feeds. May counted down. The signal sounded. We moved. Victor's acceleration crushed mine at first. Sea Wraith's turbines and rocket launch pushed it forward with mechanical violence. He gained miles before I reached half speed. 300, 400, 450. The water around me became a continuous wall. 500. Sea Wraith was far ahead. 550. I gained slowly. Victor had already used part of the rocket boost at launch. He held the rest for later. 580. The course settled into a straight, impossible chase. I reached 600. My maximum. Sea Wraith was still faster under full turbine power, but not by much without the rocket. The gap stopped changing quickly. Then I noticed something from the telemetry in my display. Victor's speed fluctuated by tiny amounts as the hydrofoil computer corrected for surface conditions. Mine did not. The water looked calm, but no ocean surface was perfectly flat. At 600 miles per hour, millimeters mattered. I dropped deeper. 1 foot. 2. 3. The flow smoothed. I held 600 more consistently. The gap began shrinking. 5 miles. 4. 3. Victor saw me coming through rear cameras. I knew what he would do next. Rocket boost. The plume appeared. Sea Wraith jumped forward. 610. 615. The gap widened again. But the boost was temporary. I kept my pace. The rocket ended. Victor dropped back toward turbine speed. 2 miles ahead. Then 1. The finish was approaching. I surfaced slightly. Sea Wraith came into view. Half a mile. Quarter mile. I could see the silver tail of the craft. Victor was still ahead. I needed something else. Then I remembered Needlefish. The team had beaten me by improving stability, not raw power. I thought about Sea Wraith's wake. At these speeds, getting close behind it would be suicidal. But the water disturbance spread outward. There might be a narrow band where the forward-moving flow helped me without throwing me around. We had used similar drafting at much lower speed. Never at 600. May would hate this. Leela would invent a new contract clause. June would probably make a shirt. I shifted sideways carefully. The display showed turbulence increasing, then decreasing. There, a narrow flow region. My effective resistance dropped slightly. Not enough to feel like a boost, enough to matter. I gained faster. Sea Wraith's rear camera spotted me. Victor moved left. I followed at a safe offset. He moved right. I followed. The final mile turned into absurd high-speed wake chess. Victor tried to deny me the flow without destabilizing his own boat. I tried to stay in the helpful band without entering the violent center. Half a mile. I pulled alongside his rear quarter. Quarter mile. Sea Wraith's nose remained ahead. 100 yards. Victor had no rocket left. I had no speed left. We crossed the finish. The timing system took several seconds. I slowed gradually, heart hammering. Then the result came through my earpiece. Tie, not figuratively. The official timing difference was below the system's certified resolution. A dead tie. I started laughing before I even stopped. Victor circled back later. When he heard the result, he stared at me. Then he said, "Again tomorrow." I laughed harder. Tomorrow I would be 1 mile per hour faster. He pointed at me and said, "Don't you dare sleep." I said, "That is not how mornings work." He said, "I hate your entire biological schedule." We did not race the next day. May refused. She said both of us needed inspection, recovery, and psychiatric evaluation. The last part was probably a joke. Probably. The tie with Sea Wraith 5 created a problem nobody had expected. People became obsessed with exact timing. For months, my races had been about obvious speed differences. Then Victor built a machine close enough to produce a result smaller than the timing equipment could confidently measure. And suddenly every engineer on Earth wanted to argue about sensors. There were forum wars over GPS drift, arguments about camera frame rates, long videos explaining transponder latency. One man uploaded a 40-minute analysis claiming my left hand crossed the virtual finish plane first. Another uploaded 52 minutes proving the opposite. June watched both and said, "I learned nothing except these people need sunlight." I agreed. Then I remembered we spent our lives racing a human against boats and decided I had no right to judge hobbies. Victor wanted an immediate rematch. May made us wait 12 days. Those 12 days were devastating for him. My maximum rose from 600 to 612 miles per hour. Sea Wraith 5 did not magically gain 12. Victor's engineers managed 4. He looked personally betrayed by arithmetic. The rematch was not close. He used the rocket perfectly. His acceleration was better. His line was cleaner. I still passed him before the finish and won by several seconds. When he climbed out of the cockpit, he sat on the hull with his helmet still on. I swam over slowly. He did not move. I asked if he was okay. He said, "I spent 12 days improving the boat." I said yes. He said, "You spent 12 days sleeping." I said I had also done laundry. He lowered his head. I probably should not have added that. Then he stood up and said Sea Wraith 6 would be ready eventually. I asked what eventually meant. He said, "When I have invented violence against calendars." That was Victor. Defeated, exhausted, financially unwell, and already naming the next machine. With 600 miles per hour behind me, the racing league started running out of surface craft. Not because engineers lacked ideas, because water at those speeds became vicious. Hydrofoils could only do so much. Surface waves that looked tiny at normal speed became major stability events. Rocket boosts helped acceleration but made control harder. Every machine needed absurdly large test zones. Then a submarine company called. Not a military submarine. A research company developing very fast unmanned underwater vehicles. Their lead engineer, Dr. Elena Voss, asked a simple question. Why were we still racing on the surface? I liked her immediately. She showed us a prototype called Mako. It was shaped like a long black spear and used a supercavitation system to create a gas bubble around much of its body, dramatically reducing contact with the surrounding water. May explained the real physics in detail. I understood maybe 40%. June summarized it as underwater air cheat. Elena looked offended. Then she paused and said, crude, but not entirely wrong. Mako's projected speed was beyond anything Victor had built. The problem was control. It could go incredibly fast in a straight line, but turning was difficult. That meant the perfect race course was a long underwater corridor. I had never raced fully submerged for more than short sections. My breathing pack would need redesigning. My navigation system would need depth control. My suit would need to handle pressure and high-speed cavitation effects. May looked more excited than I had seen her in months. Victor looked insulted that someone else had brought the next impossible machine. June asked if we could paint shark teeth on my face shield. Leela said no before he finished the sentence. The first underwater race happened 3 weeks later. By then, my maximum was 635 miles per hour. Mako's tested peak was 650. Close enough. We descended from separate support platforms into deep, clear water. No spectators anywhere near the route. The broadcast came from underwater sensors and chase cameras positioned far outside the corridor. Mako waited 50 yards away, suspended below the surface. It had no pilot. A control team operated it remotely with autonomous stabilization. I floated beside it and felt weird. Racing boats had personality because people sat inside them. Mako looked like an evil pen. I tapped the side of my helmet and told June it was creepy. He said, "You're the one wearing glowing fins at 300 feet. To the fish, you're probably the sleep paralysis demon." I looked into the dark water below. I wished he had not said that. The start signal flashed through my display. Mako fired first. Its cavitation system activated. A white bubble formed around the vehicle. Then it shot away, underwater. No rooster tail. No surface spray. Just a shrinking black shape inside a boiling tunnel. I accelerated after it. At 100 miles per hour, everything felt familiar. 300, manageable. 500, the pressure became intense. 600, my suit vibrated around the shoulders. Mako stayed ahead. Its bubble system reduced drag more efficiently than anything I could do with body position. I reached 635, maximum. Still behind. For the first half of the race, I lost ground. Then something strange happened. I entered the edge of Mako's cavitation trail. The water there was full of collapsing bubbles. Normally, I would avoid disturbed flow. But this was different. For a split second, part of my left arm moved through a gas-rich pocket and felt almost weightless. I immediately left the trail because experimental underwater bubbles at 600 miles per hour sounded like a great way to turn my skeleton into soup-flavored regret. But the sensation stayed in my mind. Mako created its own low-drag envelope. I could not generate gas. But my body at extreme speed already created cavitation around small areas near my hands and feet. May had observed it. What if I changed posture to encourage more? This was not in the plan. So naturally, I tried a tiny version. I narrowed my arms, changed wrist angle, adjusted my kick. Bubbles formed along my forearms. My suit vibration changed. My speed did not exceed the 635 limit. The power would not let me go faster than that. But I reached the limit with less effort. That mattered. Mako had higher top speed, but its bubble system required a huge gas supply. It could not maintain maximum indefinitely. I could. Halfway through, Mako's control system reduced output to preserve stability. Its speed dropped. 640, 638, 635. Now we were equal. I stayed at my maximum with the improved posture. The gap stopped growing. Then Mako dropped another 2 miles per hour. I gained. The black spear appeared ahead. I kept distance from its trail and came alongside. The underwater camera caught the exact moment. A machine wrapped in a manufactured gas bubble. Me beside it, wrapped in chaos I had basically discovered 5 minutes earlier because I refused to leave well enough alone. I passed Mako near the final quarter of the course. It boosted again for the finish. 650. It began gaining. I had no more speed, so I used endurance. I had built a lead while it conserved gas. The final burst was not long enough. I crossed first by 2 seconds. When I surfaced miles later, May was furious. Not about the win, about my improvised cavitation posture. She said we had not modeled the forces. I said I had only changed my wrist angle. She said, "At 600 miles per hour, your wrist angle can become a doctoral thesis or a funeral." And that shut me up. June, sensing danger, stayed silent for almost 40 seconds. Then he asked if that meant my wrist had academic potential. May threw a towel at him. We spent the next month studying the technique safely. It turned into a major improvement. Again, not in maximum speed. That still increased by exactly 1 mile per hour each day. But efficiency. With the right body position, controlled bubble formation reduced drag around parts of my suit. I could sustain high speed with less muscular effort. Long-distance crossings became easier. My breathing system consumed less air because I needed less aggressive motion. The suit experienced lower average load. May called it adaptive cavitation control. June called it bubble mode. The internet called it bubble kai. I hated all 3 names. And a bath soap company offered me a sponsorship. I hated existence. Leela rejected the deal. June asked how much. She told him. He looked at me and said, "Brother, I would personally bathe in a stadium for that money." I told him nobody was offering to watch him bathe. He said, "Yet." I left the room before the conversation became a crime. At 670 miles per hour, something else became obvious. I was now faster in water than many commercial airplanes were during large parts of their flights, at least by raw speed number. That did not make me a better transportation option than airplanes. Planes could fly direct over land. I could not, but coastal maps started looking different. If 2 cities were separated by land, flying still won. If they were separated by ocean, I could sometimes compete on total door-to-door time because I needed almost no airport infrastructure. This led to the dumbest serious proposal of my career. A technology company wanted to build Kai ports. Not ports for ships, ports for me. Tiny launch and recovery facilities near major coastal cities. Changing room. Equipment locker. Medical station. Navigation uplink. Secure package handling. Essentially, a personal terminal for one guy. Leela asked what happened if I retired. The executive said the buildings could become museums. I asked what happened if I got bored and started gardening. He said, "Please don't." I laughed. He did not. They built one pilot facility. It was absurdly nice. Automatic suit cleaning, heated recovery pool, private locker room, a wall display showing ocean traffic, and, because June had somehow influenced one meeting, a rubber duck shelf. I placed the original duck in the center. Lila pretended not to smile. The facility let me run high-speed courier tests with almost no preparation. One morning, a laboratory needed a small biological sample moved 600 miles along the coast to another research center. A charter plane could do it, but airport handling added time. I arrived at Kai Port, changed into the suit, locked the sample into the pack, and entered the water. 53 minutes later, I handed it to the receiving team. The lab director checked the time and said, "That's disgusting." I thought something was wrong with the sample. He meant the speed. He said their internal approval process for sending the package had taken longer than the actual 600-mile delivery. I told him bureaucracy had finally found its natural predator. The next week, a law firm asked if I could deliver signed documents across the same distance. Leela refused because she did not want my career to become very wet FedEx. I agreed. Then they offered triple the rate. Leela reconsidered for exactly 6 seconds. We did one delivery. I arrived before their conference call ended. A junior attorney opened the waterproof case, looked at the documents and whispered, "What the shit?" I respected the phrasing. The daily increase continued. 680, 690, 700. We marked 700 with no race, no media event, just a controlled test. May wanted clean data. Victor wanted to observe cavitation behavior for Sea Wraith 6. June wanted a cake shaped like the number 700. Lila allowed the cake on the condition that it stayed away from the lab equipment. The test happened in a remote ocean corridor under perfect weather. I accelerated gradually. 500, 600, 650. The modified suit created controlled bubble zones around my forearms, shoulders, lower legs, and parts of my torso. 680, 690, 700. The number appeared on my display. I held it for 3 seconds, then 5, then 10. The ocean screamed around me, not metaphorically. At that speed, cavitation, displaced water, and suit vibration combined into a deep mechanical roar I felt through my bones. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt calm. My body knew the water now. Every change in pressure told me something. Every vibration had meaning. I was no longer a terrible swimmer with a magical speed stat. I had spent more than a year learning how to survive the power. That part mattered. Then the world reminded me never to become too dramatic. A blob of jellyfish goo struck the outside of my face shield. Not a whole jellyfish, just some unfortunate ocean slime caught in my path. It spread across the visor in a translucent smear. I could still see through the side, but the center looked like someone had sneezed ectoplasm directly onto my soul. I slowed immediately. When I surfaced, June asked what happened. I said, "I think the ocean just came on my windshield." Silence. Complete silence. Then Lila's voice said, very slowly, "You are never phrasing it that way again." Victor disconnected from comms because he could not breathe from laughing. May made me clean the visor myself. That was fair. 700 miles per hour opened another category of nonsense. Long ocean crossings that had once required all-day planning became short enough to fit between meals. I could cross 2,000 miles in a few hours while staying below maximum. I could reach islands so quickly that weather forecasts barely changed during transit. Some people began treating me like a human emergency resource that needed limits. I could not be everywhere. I was not a rescue service. I still needed rest, maintenance, legal clearance, and sometimes I simply wanted to sit on a couch and eat dumplings without receiving a satellite weather briefing. Leela created a policy for urgent humanitarian requests through official agencies. Everything else went through normal scheduling. June created a fake policy card for me that said, "Do not tap glass. Aquatic courier may bite." I put it in my wallet. He still does not know. The most entertaining request came from a film studio. They were shooting an action movie with a scene where a secret agent jumps from a ship, chases another boat through the water, and climbs aboard. They wanted me as a stunt reference, not a stunt performer, just reference footage. I agreed because it sounded harmless. The director asked me to swim at 40 miles per hour behind a speedboat while cameras filmed from a helicopter. 40 felt absurdly slow now. I matched the boat easily. Then the actor playing the villain looked over the stern and saw me. Even though he knew I would be there, he visibly flinched. The director loved it. He asked me to come closer. Still safe distance. I did. The actor flinched harder. Then he forgot his line. The director yelled cut. The actor pointed at me and said, "You try remembering dialogue when a man is freestyle stalking you at highway speed." I apologized. He said it was not my fault, but my face shield made me look like an aquatic debt collector. They rewrote the scene. The final movie used a computer-generated character inspired by my movement. June watched it and said the digital version had better shoulders. I told him pixels could not bench press. He said neither could I on land. Painfully accurate. Victor eventually invited me to see Sea Wraith 6, not the finished craft. A scale model in simulation. The design had changed completely. Instead of trying to stay mostly above the surface, Sea Wraith 6 would dive. It combined surface acceleration with a super cavitating underwater phase. Victor had basically looked at Mako and decided to steal its homework with more money. Elena Voss was consulting on the project. I asked if she minded that description. She said engineering was often professionally stealing homework from physics. Fair. The target speed was 800 miles per hour. I laughed when I saw it. Not because it was impossible, because I knew exactly when I would reach 800. 100 days. Victor knew too. He said Sea Wraith 6 would be ready in 60. That gave him a 40-mile-per-hour window. A real chance. We shook hands. The next great race had a date. Then something happened that neither of us had planned. It was during an ordinary nighttime training swim 3 weeks later. No event. No broadcast. Just me. May's support team, and an empty stretch of ocean. My maximum speed was 721 miles per hour. I was cruising at 200. The sky was clear. The water was dark. My suit lights glowed softly. I was testing an updated navigation audio system when the traffic warning suddenly chimed. Object approaching from behind. I looked at the display. No registered vessel identification. That was unusual, but not impossible. Small objects and some research equipment did not always transmit standard signals. The sensor estimated relative speed. I assumed it was wrong. The number showed more than 300 miles per hour closing from behind. I was already moving at 200. Whatever approached was moving faster than 500. I increased to 300 and shifted away from the track. The object kept closing. May's voice sharpened. She ordered me farther offline. I moved. The support radar picked it up for only seconds at a time. Small profile. Underwater. Fast. Very fast. I increased to 400. Not to race it, but to create separation from the crossing point. The object changed course. It followed. Now I felt something I had not felt in months. Not danger exactly. Competition. Something was chasing me. I went to 500. It stayed behind. 600. Still there. My heart started pounding. June was shouting in the support room asking what it was. May told me not to engage. I agreed. Then the object passed me. I was moving over 600 miles per hour and something shot by on my left side like I was standing still. All I saw was a dark shape inside a long silver-white bubble. Not Mako, not Sea Wraith. Smaller. Maybe 10 feet long. Maybe less. It disappeared ahead. My display estimated its speed. 840 miles per hour. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then June said, "Kai just got overtaken in his own biome." I should have been insulted. Instead, I grinned so hard my cheeks hurt. May ordered me not to chase. I did not, technically. I simply increased speed in the same general direction. She immediately yelled my full name. That worked. I slowed. The unknown object vanished from sensors. We ended the training session and returned to the support vessel. Everyone crowded around the telemetry screens. Victor joined remotely within 10 minutes because June had called him before we reached the boat. Elena joined too. The radar data was messy. Sonar had only fragments. No transponder. No known registered test craft in the area. Victor swore it was not his. Elena swore it was not hers. May replayed my suit camera frame by frame. Most images showed darkness and bubbles. Then one frame caught the object as it passed. Black surface. Thin profile. A pale marking on the side. We enhanced the frame as much as possible without inventing details. It was not a company logo. It looked like a symbol. A circle with a diagonal wave through it. June stared at the screen. He said, "That looks villainous as hell." Leela, who had joined the call, said symbols were not villainous. June said, "Tell that to every anime ever made." Nobody had an answer. The next morning, our support ship found something floating near the location where the object had disappeared. A small waterproof capsule. Black. Same symbol. Coast authorities inspected it before anyone touched it. No explosives. No electronics. Nothing dangerous. Inside was one object. A rubber duck. Not my duck. This one was black. Around its neck was a tiny laminated card. The card had one sentence. 700 is cute. Meet me at 1000. No name. No coordinates. No explanation. Just that. Victor read it and went completely silent. Elena asked if this was some elaborate marketing stunt. Lila began calling everyone who could possibly have planned it. May wanted the capsule analyzed. June picked up the black rubber duck, looked at me, and whispered, "Brother, you have an evil duck rival." I stared at him, then at the card. 1,000 miles per hour. At my current rate, that number was still months away. For the first time since my ability began, somebody else had chosen the date of the next challenge using my own calendar against me. I should have been worried. I should have been cautious. I should have treated the mysterious super-fast underwater object, an anonymous black bath toy, with mature seriousness. Instead, I took the black duck from June and placed it beside my yellow one on the lab table. Then I smiled, because boats could not keep up with me anymore. Ships could leave days earlier and still lose. Oceans had gone from barriers to racetracks. Victor was building an 800-mile-per-hour monster just to buy himself 40 days of advantage. And somewhere out there, some mysterious bastard had apparently looked at all of that and decided I was slow. Fine, let them wait. Tomorrow, I would be 1 mile per hour faster.